Today is Tuesday, January 15, 2019. Welcome to the Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting. Serving you since 1851. It's older than the state of Oregon.
Speak for yourself.
Right. We have, our first item is our adjustments to the agenda. And item 7B, Commissioners, that is our order on the Northern Golden Foods USA project, economic development project. That item has been pulled, and Mr. Mokrahysky will be providing some information on it under item 9A, which is the county administrator's announcements. So you'll get some more info on the good news there, that we don't have to take the action that's been printed in the agenda, and Mr. Mokrahysky will explain that. We will be having our public comment as soon as we get through the adjustments to the agenda. And I think everything else will be taken up in the sequence. We may have our executive session that we have on item 11. It may be a larger executive session. I see we also have it on Wednesday as item 1, and we have it on Tuesday again as item 15. So we may have another item for our executive session. That'll be up to Mr. Dingle to lead us through that. Yeah.
We have no executive session scheduled for today. We always have it on the agenda as an item.
Oh, okay.
In case we have one, but
So
we do not have
it on the agenda. We're not doing it.
It allows us to have one if we need it.
Yep.
And our executive session is scheduled tomorrow for 11:30 a.m.
Yeah, 11:30, and that's time certain.
Time certain.
That executive session is time certain. Okay, so any other questions before we get to our public comment? Okay. So now we're going to have our public comment, and it is a 3-minute public comment, and I have my phone here available to have me put a stopwatch on. I will, thank you so much. I'll read what I think is your name, at least as clearly as I can make it out. I'll ask you to come up to the microphone. I'll ask you to say your name, and I'll ask you to say what district you live in, if you live in Lane County. If you don't live in Lane County, just tell us where you live. And then I'll start the timer as soon as you say where you live. And so we have Ms. Cuellar, I think first, followed by Mr. Cosby, followed by Maura Dooley, followed by Nena Levenger. So come on up and give your name, what district you live in, and I'll start the timer. You'll have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Cabria Cuellar, and I live in Springfield. I work in Springfield as well. I've owned a home in the Thurston Hills for over 10 years. I'm a U of O alum, and I've lived in Lane County for 20 years now. I'm here today to urge the board to join Multnomah and Benton counties in withdrawing our involvement and financial support of the Association of O&C Counties, or the AOCC. Like many Oregonians, I love our state. I grew up swimming, hiking, fishing, camping all over the state. And as an adult, I spend much of my time outdoors and feel an obligation to protect our natural resources. I value our public lands. Though much of it has been degraded by logging, of what's left, I value the protection of our watersheds, the habitat provided for our native wildlife, the ability of our forests to store carbon, the educational opportunities provided Oregonians young and old, as well as the endless recreational opportunities on our public lands. I want our public lands to be managed for the public with the above values in mind, not their timber potential. When we value our public lands for their timber potential, we lose all of those values I just mentioned, plus more. Like many Oregonians, I'm sick and tired of seeing our public lands degraded in the name of timber, valued by elected officials only for their profit potential. Like a lot of Oregonians, I pay my taxes, and I do not support this county using our hard-earned tax dollars to support this radical timber lobbying organization, an organization that has lobbied to roll back environmental protections and dramatically increase logging levels on public lands. We should not be supporting an organization that has sued the federal government to overturn protections for our Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument, the only national monument that has been set aside specifically for its biodiversity. Like a lot of Oregonians, I've seen the boom and bust of the timber industry. I've seen the negative impact of our aggressive logging practices on water, air, wildlife, and my community. I am witnessing the devastating effects of climate change right now, of which our aggressive logging practices are a contributor. As a Lane County resident and a taxpayer, I do not support the AOCC. I am asking this board to not appoint a commissioner to represent Lane County at the AOCC and withdraw from the AOCC by no longer paying membership dues or funding anti-environmental, anti-public lands agenda with taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up is Mark Cosby, followed by Maura Dooley, Nena Levenger, and Wayne Martin. And so welcome to you, Mark Cosby, and just give your name and what district you live in, and then I'll start the timer. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Well, good morning. I'm Mark Cosby. I live in Marcola, East Lane, and we got some new commissioners. It's not pleasant, but we have a huge problem with the illegal immigration issue, and it affects our community. It's just hard for me to believe that we spend $135 billion on 12.5 million illegals that are here and 4.2 million children, anchor babies, if you want to call them that. It's a toxic thing. For those that don't know me, I am the one guy that stood up over the shutting down of the public restrooms 4.5 years ago in downtown Eugene, and a big thing over that. We have 1,600 homeless people in Lane County in the street of Eugene. We just housed 100 of them. The Camp 99 had 8 or 10 public restrooms. And today, you go out on the streets downtown Eugene, the parking structures are closed. And I defy you to find 3 Bucks outhouses to take care of people that are here all night long, about 1,500 people. But anyway, we have a crisis with what's happening in our community, and it is costing us taxpayers. It's a burden to us. And I've seen it personally, truck driving. I've been to the mills. I've seen the abuses. I only got 3 minutes here. I could talk about the abuses that I've seen. You guys have probably heard the war stories. It's amazing when you see people being kicked like dogs. Happens. We have to get our heads around it. And my question to the county commissioners are you going to be a commission of doers? Are you going to deal with this issue? Or are you going to be like the city of Eugene, who has had this street problem growing on them for years and years and years, and they haven't been able to affect any change? So anyway, I thank you, and I'd like to submit this paper to wherever you want it.
Hey, why don't you give that to Mr. Mokrehysky, our county administrator, and thank you very much for your public comment this morning. Next up is Maura Dooley, followed by Nena Levenger, Wayne Martin, Jim New. So Who's next? Very good. Welcome, Ms. Dewey.
Thank you.
Please state your name and what district you live in, and then I'll start the timer and give you 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Maura Dooley, and I live in Cottage Grove. I'm here to ask you to pass a resolution to end Lane County's membership in the Association of ONC Counties, Association of Oregon and California Counties, which is the AOCC. It's a private lobbying organization to which Lane County has paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in dues, legal fees, and endowment funding over the past decades. Lane County has been using general funds contributed by county taxpayers to support a group that lobbies for special timber interests. Because it has the word counties in its title, you might think this is a public organization of some type, akin to the similarly named Association of Oregon Counties, AOC. But it's not. The AOCC is a private organization that functions primarily as a lobbyist for the timber industry and does not divulge its activities or finances to the public. AOCC is not a public body and not bound by laws for public meetings or public disclosure. Membership consists exclusively of county commissioners from 16 of the 18 counties with ONC lands. Former Lane County Commissioner Faye Stewart, from a prominent timber family in Cottage Grove, was the representative from Lane County and a longtime board member and vice president of the organization. This is a body of public officials funded by public money that is not accountable to the public in any way. Lane County has the option of withdrawing from AOCC, as did Benton County many years ago, and more recently Multnomah County. Lane County should be next. Not only do we pay dues to AOCC, but we're paying for the time of our commissioners who are representatives on this board to go to the meetings, to stay in whatever hotels they stay in, to take trips to Salem, to DC, to do their lobbying work. Why are Lane County residents paying for this? Why don't we have a commissioner sitting on the board of Cascadia Wild and going to their meetings? That would be just as reasonable as having somebody go to the AOCC meetings. AOCC uses its money at will to commission studies, pro-timber studies, engage in lawsuits, and make donations to various organizations. AOCC was an intervener in several lawsuits which undermined the Northwest Forest Plan.
And could you wrap up your time, because you're now over 3 minutes?
Okay. So it's in the interest of big timber to not have to comply with all these regulations like the Northwest Forest Plan. And so I'm asking you to remove Lane County from this private organization that's using public money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Nena Levenger, followed by Wayne Martin, Jim New, Josh Laughlin, Chandra Log. So welcome to Ms. Levenger. Please state your name, your district, and I'll then start the timer for 3 minutes.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Nena Levenger. I live in the...
Could you pull your microphone a little closer so we can hear you better?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Nena Levenger, and I live in Fall Creek, along Little Fall Creek, so that's the East Lane District. Lane County should follow the example of Benton and Multnomah counties by canceling its membership in the Association of Oregon Counties. The AOC supports a variety of efforts to roll back environmental laws and dramatically increase logging in Oregon's public forests. Currently, everywhere we look in our hills and other forest lands, vast clear cuts scar the land and negatively impact watersheds and wildlife habitat. Alarmingly, these clear cuts substantially contribute to the complex and accelerating aspects of climate change. As the planet continues to warm at an unprecedented pace, we will see significant negative impacts to Oregon's economy, communities, ecosystems, and our way of life. It's incumbent upon us to renew the health and vitality of our forests. Recent research, including a groundbreaking study from Oregon State University, shows that Oregon's logging industry emits more carbon into our atmosphere than any other sector. While Oregon forests absorb a lot of carbon, a team of OSU researchers found that the wood products industry is the largest sector contributing to carbon pollution in the state. The wood products sector generated about 1.5 times more emissions than the transportation or energy sector, emissions reported by the Oregon Global Warming Commission. Wood product emissions are the result of fuel burned by logging equipment, the hauling of timber, milling wood burned during forestry activities, and the ongoing decomposition of trees after they are cut. As a timber industry front group, the AOC testifies before Congress and endorses logging bills that continue to degrade Pacific Northwest forests, contrary to the desire of a majority of Oregonians who want expanded protections for public land. Again, I urge you to cancel Lane County's membership in the Association of Oregon Counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levenger. Next up, Wayne Martin, followed by Jim New, Josh Laughlin, Chandra Log, and Kevin Cronin. So welcome, Wayne Martin. You'll have 3 minutes after you state your name and the district you live in.
I'm Wayne Martin, and I'm going to wait a while till I tell you what district I'm in so that my time can start later.
Your time's just starting right now.
Okay. I live in your domain, happily. So thank you very much for another privileged opportunity to be with you. And I'm mostly wanting to just give you a lot of my feelings of appreciation. It's astonishing how you were able to have ears and heart and discussion and earnestness to give the campers a few more days. It's made a huge difference. My colleague, Chris McAllister, and I have been out there a lot, and we can just feel how much it mattered that we weren't dealing with panicking and stressed people to the extent that we would have been. It mattered. Thank you. And if I'm a little overly appreciative and recognize, and these words seem to be almost for effect, they are not for effect. They come really from deep place. And that is, I really would like to recognize Steve Mokraheisky, his immense hard work. I don't know how many hours a week you work, but you need them all for what you've accomplished. The capacity of the county to be there with staff, I can name 6 or 7 of them who have been present there, and it's been remarkable. I think it's unprecedented, and I urge you, the board, to take advantage of the momentum. I think I have one last thing to say, and that is I really recommend that you strongly consider kind of renegotiating your budget so that you have a line item that can have a significant impact with its budget entry, that you create a staff position and a staff department, the Department of Homeless Services, and then you do a nationwide search with this money as you allocate it for somebody with 10 or 15 years of experience dealing with very, very difficult and unsolvable homeless issues and has a success record. Such people exist, and because of all the progress you've made just in the last 3 months, it would be tempting to not move ahead very much because the warmer weather will be here in 3 months. Please don't do that. Consider expanding the function of the county and get a department. I think you'll see immense results. Thank you all for what you've done. Really appreciate it, Steve.
Thank you. Let's see, thank you very much. We're next up with Jim New, followed by Josh Laughlin, followed by Chandra Log, Kevin Cronin, Jason Nance, Debra Magee. And so welcome to Jim New. So give your name and where you, what district you live in, and I'll give you 3 minutes for public comment.
Thank you. My name is Jim New. I live in Ward 7. Thank you, County Commissioners, for allowing me to speak and on your new appointments. Leaders from every nation on this planet have met at the 24th Conference of the Parties in Poland, with the only exception being the President of the United States. To urgently combat the scale of current climate crisis, it becomes imperative that we launch a fossil-free future campaign across the country at a local level. You, as a local elected officials, have the ability to continue this campaign by working to build a fossil-free world and committing to 100% renewable energy sources. As Governor Brown stated in her State of the Address yesterday, Oregon must reduce harmful emissions that contribute to global warming while building a clean energy economy. No new fossil fuel infrastructure ordinance and a fossil fuel risk bond requirement would prevent the growth of fossil fuels in Lane County and would be a local instrument in fighting global warming. A fossil fuel risk bond requirement would lay the costs from the fossil fuel product life cycles, such as storage, transportation, and combustion, on the industry and not pass it on to our community and its citizens. The public trust doctrine states governments serve the interests of the public and have a duty to protect our natural resources for current and future generations from climate change. Natural carbon drawdown costs must be paid for by the very industries responsible for climate risks through the fossil fuel product life cycles. A fossil-free theory of change proposes we halt all new fossil fuel projects and commit to 100% renewable energy. The expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure depreciates each citizen's essential and inalienable right to a healthy environment, defers our mutual responsibility as trustees to preserve the environment for our future and current generations. The urgency of this campaign is being championed by all 350.org chapters across the world and requires commitments from local governments. 350 Eugene is committed to carrying out this campaign with your help. The City of Eugene is implementing their climate action plan in order to meet the goals of the Climate Recovery Ordinance. Lane County should support this plan as a large lever shareholder and develop its own county climate action plan that would help meet the state's goals of carbon reduction by 2035. States, counties, and cities have to take charge as the current federal administration is failing us. We ask you to consider developing a county climate action plan to help reduce global warming at a local level. I thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up is Josh Laughlin, followed by Chandra Log, Kevin Cronin, Jason Nance, Debra Magee, and welcome to Mr. Laughlin. And if you could give your name and the district you live in, I'll start the timer and give you 3 minutes.
Sure. Good morning, Chair Sorensen, Vice Chair Buck, members of the commission. My name is Josh Laughlin. I live in Lane South District. I'm the executive director of Eugene-based Cascadia Wildlands, and here representing our 10,000 members and supporters in the region, most of which are based here in Lane County. Much of our conservation work is focused on federal forest and watershed management here in Western Oregon, and that's why I'm here today. I urge you today to begin the process of removing Lane County's membership in the Association of ONC Counties, and this begins by not appointing a representative to this anti-environmental body. Shockingly, as you've heard from others already, Lane County expends tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer dollars each year in membership dues and litigation fees. This organization's been at the forefront of extreme anti-environmental policy for years, most recently legally challenging the Bureau of Land Management's new forest plan, which ramps up logging in Western Oregon by 37% and emphasizes a return to clear cutting. The AOCC believes that 37% boost is not enough. What the ramp up on the ground means is places like Shotgun Creek and the Thurston Hills are now being proposed for clear cutting. These are some of the closest federal public lands to the Eugene-Springfield area that residents use regularly for recreation, hunting, fishing, not to mention their habitat values and their ability to store vast amounts of carbon. The Association of ONC Counties was also a plaintiff in a recent lawsuit trying to reverse protections for the popular Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument in Southern Oregon, suggesting that these biologically rich and diverse lands should instead be utilized for logging. I bet if you queried Lane County residents today, you'd find that the vast majority wouldn't approve of Lane County giving out nearly $100,000 of public taxpayer dollars to a big timber lobby group last year alone. I bet you'd have a lot more support for parks improvements and expansion. County residents live here, work here, and are moving here in droves because of our incredible quality of life, not for its clear cuts. It's long overdue that Lane County remove itself and its membership from the Association of ONC Counties. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Laughlin. Next up is Chandra Log, followed by Kevin Cronin, Jason Nance, Debra Magee, Sandra Clark, Lonnie Douglas, and Jonathan Manton. So welcome, Ms. Log. If you could give us your name and your district, and then I'll start the timer and give you 3 minutes.
Thanks, Pete. It's nice when your commissioner, because I live in the South District, knows how to pronounce your name. Chandra Log. And I work for Oregon Wild, another environmental nonprofit organization. So like Josh, I'm here representing our thousands of members and supporters in Lane County. Oregon Wild was founded in Lane County to help protect our public lands, our wild places, our old growth forests, and also to work on restoring some of the watersheds and forest lands that have been degraded by past unsustainable management. You'll be hearing from, and I've already heard from some of our supporters, about this issue of the Association of ONC Counties and our Lane County's engagement with and membership in this this group. And there's lots of good reasons for them to be concerned. The AOCC regularly works against pretty much everything that our conservation organization stands for. The AOCC essentially advocates for logging and increased logging of our federal public lands known as ONC lands that are found in Western Oregon. And Lane County has 375,000 acres of these ONC lands. So it's a significant amount, usually found close to town, as Josh mentioned, Thurston Hills, Shotgun Creek areas, for example. And Lane County pays membership dues and contributes to the AOCC's litigation fund. This last year, and we paid $107,000 to the AOCC. And as Maura mentioned earlier, we actually don't really know what these funds are used for because there's not any transparency within this organization. But we do know what you know, sort of on the ground what they do with it in a sense, because we see evidence of their lobbying and litigation efforts, things that Oregon Wild tracks. So over the last 2 decades, we've seen them consistently support timber sales, clear cuts, and other efforts that target some of our last older forests, of which we have only 10% left from pre-settlement days. and that would impact threatened wildlife. The AOCC has lobbied in support of legislation in Congress numerous times, so that's on the record, to increase logging at the expense of water quality, fish and wildlife habitat, restoration, and public participation, importantly. As Josh just mentioned, they've filed litigation against the designation of the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument in Southern Oregon. And there are several, they've been involved in several lawsuits challenging the Northwest Forest Plan and the BLM's new management plans, as Josh just said, for not logging enough. I do have a list of their litigation activities that I can provide. So the AOCC's effort threatened the natural amenities and quality of life provided by our public lands here in Lane County, from water quality to recreation. That are and those things are driving growth and business here in Lane County. So I feel like they're undermining all of your efforts.
I'll point out you're beyond your time.
Okay,
right
thank
now.
you.
Yep.
So withdrawing from the Association of ONC Counties would be a great start in, and I'm sure there's many of you up there on the board and here in the room that can think of a better use for the over $100,000 that gets sent to this organization today. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kevin Cronin. Next, after him, will be Jason Nance, Debra Magee, Sandra Clark, Lonnie Douglas, and Jonathan Manton. And if anybody hasn't signed up, when we finish, the people who have signed up, I'll ask that you identify yourself so that if you haven't spoken, you'll be given an opportunity. So welcome to Mr. Cronin. If you could give your name and the district you live in, I'll give you 3 minutes for your public comment.
Thank you. Chair Sorensen, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Kevin Cronin, and I live in the heart of the South Eugene district. I am here today as both an advocate for the courthouse project and as a concerned citizen. My background is in campaign management and elections. In 2017, I helped the Josephine County Commissioners pass a non-contiguous special library district, which is the first tax measure their county passed in over 50 years. And I've worked on a number of elections here in Lane County. Last week, I sat in on the courthouse overview and learned quite a bit. Unfortunately, I had to leave before you had a chance to meet with our legislative delegation. I want to thank Commissioner Bozovich in particular for his leadership on this project. However, I am very concerned with the baseline polling results of 47% and 53% after brief positive statements. I do think that the messaging testing was all very good stuff. If someone was to hand me that exact poll and ask me to wager on whether or not the courthouse would be approved by the voters in May, I wouldn't be too high on its chances. Now, I recognize how difficult it can be to poll such a complex issue, such as the courthouse. Additionally, during the past 2018 cycle, I've seen a number of polls be way off, one from the House Democratic Caucus. But I can't help but wonder if this poll is slightly off from the projected May 2019 special election electorate. It is my recommendation to ask staff to conduct another poll before the February 12th projected third reading for referral to the voters. It would be a waste of time and resources for the county to pay to produce voters' pamphlets and run an education campaign for a measure that is somewhat doubtful to pass. I have consulted a professional pollster, and they have assured me that the county administration would have time to do another poll between now and the February 12th deadline. I think it would be a wise investment to be absolutely certain you wanted to move forward. I am really excited about the prospect of bringing $252 million worth of construction projects to our county, and I commend Commissioner Burney for wanting to make a project labor agreement for that. That's really good stuff. I understand the complex legislative calendar that makes the May 2019 election an ideal opportunity for this measure. I think the May 2020 or November 2020 would have a more friendly electorate and recommend delaying until then unless you get back a poll before the February 12th deadline that has the courthouse winning with 60 to 65%. If and when you decide to move forward with this courthouse project, I am committed to mobilizing my team to do the grassroots chores that it takes to pass this type of measure. If anyone wants to talk to me, leave my cards. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cronin. Next up is Jason Nance, Debra Magee, Sandra Clark, Lonnie Douglas, Jonathan Manton. And welcome to Jason Nance. Please state your name and what district you live in, and then you'll have 3 minutes to give your public comment.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Jason Nance. I live in the Springfield area of Ward 2. And I just wanted to thank you guys for this opportunity to come speak this morning. And I'm here today as an environmental activist. The last election, we watched the leadership of the county shift into a new focus for our county. And I'm looking forward to the policy changes and the direction the commission takes under Commissioners Burney and Buck. That being said, as an environmental activist, I am concerned about the Lane Regional Air Protection Agency, or LRAPA. I know that the commission is going to be appointing a member to that committee or to that agency. As a resident of Springfield, I think Springfield needs some good representation on that committee, as we are home to some of the major polluters of the county and the state. And I think that we need a diplomatic organizer to step up and take that position. As Commissioner Burney is my commissioner, I would be very pleased and proud to see you take on this role. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we have Deb Magee, followed by Sandra Clark. Please come up. And then Lonnie Douglas, Jonathan Manton. So please move up to the front so you can be ready to roll. So welcome, Deb Magee. Please give your name and your district you live in, and then you'll have 3 minutes for your public comment.
My name is Debra Magee. I live in Commissioner Buck's district, and I volunteer with 350 Eugene. Dear County Commissioners, I stand before you today, happy and excited and willing to say, we the people, we voted to change your makeup. Now we want to tell you to make good on this shakeup. See, time is getting short. Stuff is hitting the fan. We elected you to come up with some plans. Our neighbors unhoused with needs unmet, give them a roof and a space that includes their beloved pet. Only 12 years before climate collapse begins, civilization's survival may be on the hinge. We need a county climate action plan to cut greenhouse gas emissions as fast as we can. Cancer-causing chemicals sprayed overhead. My mom and my sister from cancer, both dead. Forestry industry sprays 2,4-D and atrazine. You all know aerial spraying is obscene. Lincoln County passed their ballot measure and for 2 years been spray-free. It hasn't destroyed their economy. We are a species who has fouled our nest. Pollution, toxins, clear cuts, fossil fuels, plastics, all the rest. I know you all have lots of issues on your plates, land use and budgets and unhoused people's fate, but the climate crisis is a much bigger threat than ISIS. All these other issues going to be so much worse. And what are we leaving our children? It's a travesty. It's a curse. Mama always said, no matter how far down you've gone, the wrong path, you can always turn around. What do you folks want to be remembered for? Please fulfill the will of the people. Please don't ignore. Our expectations are great. We got your back. Go boldly forward. We'll help fight off the attacks. Call on us here, we who got you elected. Together in Lane County, we will all be better protected. Thank you.
Thank you, in under 2 minutes, and rhyming as well. So let's move to Sandra Clark, followed by Lonnie Douglas, followed by Jonathan Manton. Is there anyone in the audience that hasn't signed up and wants to speak? Okay, well, I'll call on you, sir, at the end. Okay, welcome, Ms. Clark. Name, district, 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Sandra Clark, and I'm in Commissioner Buck's district, and I want to say that was a really tough act to follow. First, allow me to offer my congratulations to Commissioners Buck and Burney. Thank you for stepping up to all of you and serving the county in this way. We know that you have many issues to deal with, from small and detailed to the large scale. But nothing is larger scale than our changing climate. So I feel like I could offer a really scary and potentially devastating list of probable impacts, but that would probably shut us all down emotionally. And I believe you know them already. And I also believe that you know that we are in a uniquely critical time. But I do wish I knew the words that would help motivate folks like you, our elected officials, to really get going on solutions. So I'm asking that you do many things, but among them is to seek public input to create a county climate action plan with input that includes segments from all from all segments of the Lane County population, that this action plan sets goals to become carbon neutral in a timely way, that you provide incentives for residents to switch off of fossil fuels, and that you coordinate with other regional entities. So we all know that there are things that we individually can do, but really this is a systems issue. And so whether you knew it or not, when you stepped up to serve in the way that you're serving, you are the ones with the power to create substantive change. So I hope I speak for the people of Lane County, because we depend on you to be champions. I think if you heard a theme this morning, you would know that we are asking you to be stewards of our beautiful county and our beautiful land. And so for that reason, I'm asking you, our elected officials and our appointed officials, to be as courageous as you can when facing and dealing with climate issues. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to Mr. Douglas. And please give your name, district, and take 3 minutes.
Yeah, Lonnie Douglas. I'm in Joe Bernie's district. I'm watching you. No, so every winter communities do a count of their homeless, and those numbers are used to generate a report, an annual homeless assessment report to the United States Congress. In December, we got those numbers for 2018. Oregon leads, there's 5 areas that they basically look at: individuals that are homeless, families that are homeless, families with children that are homeless, children unaccompanied that are homeless, so just kids out there on the street, and vets that are homeless. Oregon is in the top 5 in all 5 of those categories. Lane County is in the top 4, individuals, families with children, children unaccompanied, and vets in the top 5 of 4 of those areas in rural communities throughout the country. So that's something I think that we should really, we should be ashamed of. We need some leadership to make sure that we can turn that around. That being said, I mean, we as an entire community should be ashamed of it. That being said, we have a housing crisis. It's not just unhoused, but it's just across the board. We need shelters. We need transitional housing for the unhoused. We need services for them. We need low income and income-based public housing for people that are couch surfing or sharing a small, 1-2 bedroom home with multiple families. So we need to do something. We need leadership on this. For the unhoused issues, we have individuals that are working on winter strategies, trying to keep people from freezing to death in our streets. I think we've already had 1 death I believe this year. Chris McAllister, I think, has come up with ideas for you for opening some of the public campgrounds for car parking, like Richardson Campground, and for people to park their mobile homes and such. I'd urge you to really listen to people like Chris, listen to these ideas. We need to deal with the emergency of people in the winter being unhoused, but we also need to deal with the bigger emergency that we have of people just not being able to have homes or being pushed into homelessness. So thank you for your time. Y'all have a nice day.
Thank you so much. Okay, and let's see, Jonathan Manton, and then, sir, can you just come up after him and give your name and thank you. Okay, welcome, Mr. Manton. Your name, your district, and your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorensen. My name is Jonathan Manton, and I live in Santa Clara. It's nice to be before you here today. I'm here also on my own accord, but as well as on behalf of Mountain Rose Herbs. I'm the policy director for Mountain Rose Herbs, which is a mission-based company whose motto is people, plants, and planet before profit. Founded in 1987, we are a certified organic retail purveyor of herbs and spices, loose leaf teas, organic oils, body care products, culinary delights, and do-it-yourself supplies. In 2007, we operated 7 buildings with a total of 137,300 square feet in Eugene. We're committed to sustainable business practices, organic agriculture, and equality. We have over 200 employees. I'm here today to incorporate all the comments that have been made before me with regard to asking for your, to not send a liaison to the AOCC, and certainly not to spend taxpayer dollars funding that organization. I thought I would use my brief time today to just highlight a few of the arguments that I've heard in favor of both those positions, which I think do not hold water. One is that we need to have a seat at the table at the AOCC. This notion presumes that we can send a liaison and somehow influence the direction of that organization. I think if you do an honest and thorough evaluation of that organization's history, what they're advancing now through their litigation, I think you'll find that that argument is kind of naive, that the direction of that organization is set. They have values which prioritize maximizing timber harvest over our public lands over all other values. And I think the idea that we're going to go and send somebody who can influence that is just not really realistic. And we really welcome this notion that we're going to do a transparent and fully informed evaluation of this AOCC. I want to thank each of you for embarking upon that journey. To the extent that you do that and decide if anyone wants to move forward with it, I think you should publish your findings. Like, does this litigation, in fact, advance the public interest, and if so, how? And let us all weigh in on that to see and to have a balanced, response. But finally, the argument is made that we need to be a part of AOCC because they lobby for the Secure Rural Schools program. And certainly we need more money for our rural schools. There's no disagreement there. Thankfully, our federal delegation and with members in both parties have vast experience on this issue. And I believe it's pretty clear that we can help our delegation to continue to lobby for Secure Rural Schools funding as a county, as members of the public, without having to be a member of the AOCC. We need lots of more money for our public schools. Governor Brown just introduced yesterday a plan for $2 billion in increased funding for public schools. There are more effective ways to go after schools without sacrificing our public lands. So in closing, I just wanted to urge you to stand with the clean, green economy. The new economy is clean. The new economy is green. It is important to protect our quality of life, and sending taxpayer dollars to this organization runs counter to all of that. Join us to fight with kids and securing tax funding for schools without sacrificing public lands, without sacrificing our quality of life, and ultimately without sacrificing the biodiversity upon which we all depend. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Manton. Okay, and please come up, and I'm going to write your name down here so that our record's clear with your name.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
What's your name, please?
Chris McAllister.
Chris McAllister.
From Springfield.
Okay. Okay, please take 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you, esteemed commissioners, for your time. My name is Chris McAllister, and I am a volunteer here in Lane County for our unhoused and at-risk population. I just want to say it makes one kind of uncomfortable when you hear your name or your ideas talking through other people. However, we all need to get a little bit uncomfortable. So we're dealing with stuff that no one really has a solution for. No one's really tried to do a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do for the populations that we're trying to do here in Lane County. I have mad respect for the work that Mr. McAllister has been doing, having seen him move when people have learned that, hey, just because we have systems like Egan warming centers doesn't mean that they're necessarily activated. Things move so quickly. And while we think about how, as a system, things move so quickly and we don't necessarily have the ability to respond in the time that we would like to, imagine that on a micro level. We have people with their lives like that. We have people with this situational homelessness. The rent went up too much in 1 month. The job laid off or moved to Iowa. Industries fail, they come and go. Housing comes and goes. We need options for people who are on that slope down at the bottom. We need low income and no income type solutions. I am the grandson of a war bride, so I am proud of my immigrant roots, and we need solutions for all of our community. And I implore you to take the political will to do something that may make people uncomfortable, but we need to be willing to be uncomfortable. We need to be able to say, you know what, maybe we need this spot to be used for people that I don't understand. Because ultimately, if you look at the volunteer base who's been helping out, a shout out to HEAT, to CCC, to Ward 9, and the rest of the community who's been involved in these solutions, we need to look and see who's those membership. We have seniors, we have disabled, we have former homeless, we have addicts stepping up and doing what it takes to help people get in a better place. So I implore you, please stand with us, please come work with us, and please help us find solutions today. Encourage our staff to be uncomfortable, to take challenges, and to look at things from a wider scope. Thank you very much for your time and your service.
Thank you very much, Mr. McAllister. Is anyone else that has not signed up that wants to speak during our public comment? Okay, seeing none further, I'll call on the board to move to the third item on our agenda, which is commissioner responses to public comments. And we have a 2-minute limit that has been routinely violated. And I'm not sure if we should keep that 2-minute limit on there, but do any commissioners want to make any remonstrance or comments?
I will start.
You will start. Very good.
Right.
Commissioner Buck.
I have a couple of things, and I may not get it in my first 2 minutes. I first just wanted to read a very brief letter that I wanted to read into record today. It's to our Lane County Administrator, Steve Mokryski, and Lane County Council, Stephen Dingle. It's very brief, and I wanted to make sure that the board has heard me as well. Dear County Administrator and County Council, I'm writing to declare I have a potential conflict of interest with any votes concerning St. Vincent de Paul Society of Lane County, Inc. I will recuse myself from any votes that present an actual conflict of interest or a direct financial impact on myself or my relatives. I write this letter to alert the Board of Commissioners and the county government in advance of any potential conflicts that could arise in the regular course of business on behalf of Lane County. I'm providing this letter to alert the staff and seek their assistance in informing the board of any business that St. Vincent de Paul of Lane County, Inc. has with the county that may come up in the future. Sincerely, Heather Buck. I'm just going to leave this to the side. There you go. Separately from that, I just want to thank everybody that came out to speak today. I am interested in your opinion on a second courthouse poll. I know we briefly touched on it last week, but given what was read for us today, was interested in chatting about that a little bit more. And I do agree that we have a momentum right now in the housing work that has already been done preceding me being here on the board. And I think when the TAC report comes out and we talk about that will really spark an action plan for the remainder of the year. At least I'm hopeful for that. And I thank you for those comments as well. I'm also interested in what we have done for Lane County in the way of climate and what was mentioned as a climate action plan. If we have one, is that something that the board is interested in? I'd be interested in further discussion on that as well.
Thank you. Anyone else, Commissioner? No?
I will, but I'm deferring to others.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things to talk about today. Thank you for your input. First thing I'm going to say is that like many Oregonians, love Oregon. I wasn't born here like you, Ms. Cuellar, but I bet you I moved here before you did. I came here in '65. I immigrated from the British Isles to here in 1965. Love Oregon. So two things that I'm going to address. One is regarding homelessness, and Mr. McLaughlin has left, I believe, but I want to thank him for adding his voice to the many voices we hear and the many voices that we add to the creation of innovative responses to homelessness. We are doing that in Lane County. We're scratching the surface of doing it, but we are moving forward. We're trying to build new types of housing, including shelter, and we will be discussing the Lane County Shelter Feasibility Study this month at length and for many years to come as we create a strategic plan surrounding this strategic shelter feasibility study. I'm not going to talk very much about that right now, but Mr. McAllister, thank you for your work. I saw you toiling yesterday and all weekend long at Camp 99. The other thing I'm going to say is that Mr. Manton, are you still here? There you are. Thank you for your testimony. You kind of wrapped up what others said regarding the OACC, and you said you asked us to participate in an honest and thorough investigation, including an evaluation of legislation. I would agree with that. Honest, thorough evaluations is certainly something that we try to do, and in the 6 years that I've been here, I think we've done a pretty good job of that. I watched county commissioners in the past, and it wasn't always that way, but I think we have had a deliberative discussion, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years. One thing that I may ask to table a motion later on in this meeting regarding appointing a delegate to OACC. I think that if we voted today, there would be a split vote on it, and I think further discussion may be necessary. I'm going to read a quote. We had some quotes today. This is a quote, direct. "Without a permanent fiscal solution, forested counties in Oregon and across the country will continue to slide into financial uncertainty. Oregonians will continue to be left with fewer teachers and law enforcement officers, forced to close libraries and unable to repair broken bridges and roads. A bipartisan, bold approach will finally end the financial roller coaster." Now, that was a quote by Senator Wyden, and he's talking about what is called the Bipartisan Forest Management for Rural Stability Act. And as we discuss membership in OACC or any other participation that we're going to, any other endeavor we're going to participate in regarding lobbying, I think it's important that we kind of weigh everything that we're trying to accomplish. And I think Senator Wyden sums it up, regarding the financial woes that Lane County has had in our general fund and in our road fund because of the old agreement we have with the federal government regarding BLM and Forest Service lands. Something that we need to have a thorough discussion about. And while we heard one side of a discussion today, hearing both sides of the discussion as to what is it that we need to do, how can we have an honest and thorough investigation regarding participation in lobbying efforts at the federal level, regarding the more than half of the land in Lane County that is federally owned. So, Mr. Mokryski, if you hear me ask to table a motion later on in this meeting, it will be tabling it to have that honest and thorough investigation. I want to thank you, Mr. McAllister, for being here. Thank you, Reverend Martin, for being here, and let's work together this week to make things happen. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Yes.
Thank you. I think that we live in an era where we are watching various aspects of our social safety net fall into disrepair. And I think that that is as much a national phenomenon for a variety of reasons that are outside of our community control. But I also think concurrently, we have the opportunity to be a little more open at this level with our conversations and looking at those open and honest and thorough assessments of what opportunities we do and don't have to move forward. I think we have the opportunity to look at not just institution-based solutions, but also community-based solutions to some of these issues. I don't think it's a secret that my last business was looking at, in terms of buildings, how we create net zero plus facilities, which means more clean energy is generated from each building than is used by that building. I will look forward to drilling down deeply, and I agree that we need to look at joining over 100 cities and counties across this country in terms of committing to 100% renewable energy by a certain time frame. I think that homelessness is beyond the scope of just our resources, but as one of my mentors, and believe it or not, I'm old enough that she was a personal friend, the cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a few people can change the world. Indeed, that's the only way the world has ever changed. I think our opportunity as we look at best practices and innovative solutions to these and other issues is going to be, as we get there, perhaps going virally, we might actually change or at least positively impact some of these issues from the bottom up. And I think that that's a unique opportunity that this community has, and I'm going to be delighted to working with all of you and figuring out what those solutions are.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the public testimony today. Interesting mix of testimony from homelessness to climate change to immigration. Yeah, I also want to appreciate Commissioner Farr's call for a thorough and honest investigation, because I believe there's a lot of terminology being thrown out about the Association of O&C Counties that is not being completely honest. The catch-all term of public lands is trying to make people think it's involving all public lands, when the association specifically concerning the Oregon and California railroad lands that were county lands and turned over to the federal government in trust to be managed for timber production for the benefit of the counties and the schools. And that is basically what they're involved in, is just those O&C lands. They don't have any say over U.S. Forest Service lands or other Bureau of Land Management public lands or other public domain lands. Second is this notion that somehow or another they're against the Cascade-Siskiyou Monument and wanted to overturn the Cascade-Siskiyou Monument. What they're questioning is the constitutional conflict that's been brought up by the expansion of the Cascade-Siskiyou Monument by executive order into lands set aside by an act of Congress, which are the O&C lands. Mind you, if they had proposed dedicating other public domain lands to replace those lands, there wouldn't be an issue. And that was requested to Senator Merkley and was not offered. So that's really what this is about, that particular lawsuit, is a constitutional resolution. Which takes precedence, the 1937 Act of Congress or the more recent executive order? And as we're concerned about emergency executive orders coming up, I think it's a fair question to have resolved in the courts. It's not against the values of the monument or the values of wilderness. So I really hope we will look at that, in particular in interest to the current legislation being drafted by Senators Wyden and Crapo. It's really important that we have folks that have expertise helping craft that important piece of legislation, which will provide services to all citizens of Lane County. In fact, just in 2016 and 17, that association's correction of the sequester of timber replacement payments added $600,000 to our budget. So we've gotten more than a return on our investment in those dues. And frankly, the idea that somehow or another the timber industry is evil is another thing I kind of object to that classification. They provide family wage jobs, and as we talk about the housing crisis, they provide a building material that is the lowest carbon building material out there and most renewable, far better than concrete and steel. And as we look at trying to build low-income housing and shelter, we need to think about building it with the most renewable material possible. So I really hope that we can have that open and honest discussion about the benefit of the association, and we don't reach any knee-jerk reactions based on partial information that's being put out on the internet, making it sound like this organization has nefarious intent.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll just take a few minutes here to give a few remarks. The first is today was the first time that I had the opportunity to work with the agenda team in preparing the agenda for next week's board meeting. I'm asking Vice Chair Buck to run the meeting next week at 8 a.m. to plan the meeting for the 29th. You'll be able to do that, won't you? Yeah, good. I also wanted to thank everyone who came for public comment. On the topic of climate change, the board last week provided guidance to the agenda team to set up a briefing with Ernie Nemi. Mr. Nemi has prepared a memo that we put on the website last week. My understanding is we'll be having him come in on the 29th of January, and he wrote a memo specific to Lane County and the climate impacts to Lane County, and that's on the website from last week's meeting. Concerning the courthouse, we're going to have the first reading of our measure to put the measure on the ballot in May. And the first reading is simply to provide the public with notice that they can give a public testimony on whether or not we should go with the current plan of May of 2019 or whether we would want to do that later. But we'll be doing the first reading today of that measure. Another thing I want to mention was on the topic of homelessness. We've got a lot of people that come and give us their perspective. Just wanted to point out that our board meeting next week is a very short meeting. It's 90 minutes from 5:30 to 7 p.m. and it's on the topic of the public shelter feasibility study, which the TAC report is all about, Technical Assistant Collaborative. So if you're interested in that, you can come to our joint meeting with the City of Eugene City Council, and that'll be on the 22nd at 5:30 p.m. And I wanted to mention that, of course, we're not having a regular meeting next week on Tuesday, except for this special meeting on Tuesday evening. And the reason we're not having that meeting is because we've generally had down weeks during federal holidays. And of course, next week is the federal holiday honoring the life of Martin Luther King Jr. And, you know, a lot of things are said about Martin Luther King Jr. One thing I don't think has been said, at least in my view, enough, is that one of his principal legislative accomplishments was the 24th Amendment. Now, a lot of people have heard of the First Amendment and the Second Amendment and various other amendments, but the 24th Amendment didn't even exist when I was born. It came about specifically as a result of Martin Luther King's advocacy, and that is to prohibit poll taxes in federal elections. Not state elections, not local elections, but federal elections. That was the choice that they took because the advocates of getting rid of poll taxes was to make it possible for more people to vote in federal elections only. And I think that the passage of the 24th Amendment was a great thing, but it also illustrates something that we as commissioners have to deal with, and that is sometimes you don't get everything you want. Sometimes maybe you wanted to have no poll taxes on all elections. Well, Martin Luther King Jr. in this instance pushed for a federal amendment to ban poll taxes in federal elections. And I think it's among the many things we honor him for, that's one of them. So, okay, we're now ready to move to emergency business. I don't think we have any emergency business, but I'll ask Mr. McAllister to confirm that.
We do not.
We do not. Very good. Okay, so next up is our consent calendar, and that is item 5. We usually consider these items set as relatively non-controversial, and we like people to give as much notice to staff as possible. That's why we list the staff people on there. And And usually during the adjustments portion of the meeting, we'd like commissioners, if they do want to pull something, to let us know and let the staff people know that you're planning to pull something. So with no one pulling anything, I'll entertain a motion from our vice chair to approve the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Vice Chair Buck, seconded by Commissioner Burney, to approve the consent calendar as presented. And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. And the motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. I think we'll pass over item 7A until Mr. That's our county council announcements, until our county council's
That's 6A.
6A, excuse me, thank you. See, that's what you do. You keep it going. That's right.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe the county council has any announcements. So.
Okay, all right. Well, in the event that he does, we'll come back to it. If he doesn't, we won't come back to it.
Sounds fair.
Sounds fair. Next up, we have Ms. Williams, and that's item 7A. This is our update on the 7A, the quarterly update on the 2018-2021 Lane County Strategic Plan. Ms. Williams is our strategy and integration manager, and she, the agenda team, set this up for a 45-minute item. And so this is something we can dig into, and I'll just invite you to take whatever time you need to kind of orient people to the strategic plan.
Mr. Chair, just a couple of introductory comments to this. We will have this is what we did last time in the direction that the board had provided, is you liked the structure we did last time where we didn't give you the laundry list update on, all 60 or 70 goals that we're pursuing in our quarterly update, but we identified 4 particular initiatives that may be of particular interest to the board. We're going to give you updates on those, so it allows a little bit more time for some discussion. This is one of our quarterly updates, so we do quarterly updates to the board on our strategic plan. We were due for a work session, which we do at the end of each year, to update the plan, but we waited on that because we knew in December that we had a new board coming on the beginning of the year, and so we will have that work session to sort of do it'll be a longer session in March for the board to hear some updates and then provide feedback. I've heard a couple times now comments about a climate action plan. There may be, I would expect that there will be other thoughts and ideas about new initiatives or adjustments to existing goals that we've identified. We certainly can take your feedback today, but just know that we'll have a chunk of time. We wanted to give the board a little bit of time to settle in before we had that work session. So that will be coming in March, where we'll really dive in more detail into the strategic plan and give you an opportunity to give us feedback on what you like, where you would want to see adjustments or add some things. And then finally, I'll just make the broader comment that I feel really strongly, and I think our staff and the board has felt really strongly historically about the importance of having a plan, an overarching guiding roadmap for our organization. This is the board's plan, the umbrella strategic plan for the county that really acknowledges the fact that we don't have enough money or people or time to do all the things that our community may want us to do. And so if we're going to be successful, we need to be focused and aligned around the things that are priorities for the Board of Commissioners. So this is your strategic plan. This is for you to tell us where I've used the analogy that the staff, I and the staff are the bus drivers and you all are the passengers. You tell us where to go, where you want to go, and we'll find the most efficient and cost-effective way to get you there. So I'll stop there and turn over to Judy to walk you through a little bit about process, some brief updates, and then we'll invite a few folks to give some more in-depth information to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve.
Good morning, Chair Sorensen and Commissioners. And I, again, like Steve said, I'm going to kind of walk through the quarterly update, but also I wanted to step back a little bit and talk about the process leading up to developing this plan and adopting it. So you have a little bit more of that background. And then I have about 10 or so slides. I'm planning to take about 10, maybe 15 minutes at the most, and then I really want to turn it over to, we have 4 guest presenters that will update on 4 specific items. So, and then plenty of time for questions for them as well. So I'm going to quickly walk through, like I said, the development, what happened after we first adopted the plan, some of the tracking process, guidelines. There's a lot of information in your board packet, and so I was hoping to take just a couple minutes to kind of explain which attachments mean what and how best to kind of look at the plan. But to take a step back, we started a quick conversation or several quick conversations with the board at the end of 2017 to really, we were wrapping up our last strategic plan, and we really wanted to talk to the board about expectations and thoughts around developing a new plan as we were coming up on the end of the prior one. What really came out of those board discussions were we would hope to have an outside facilitator facilitating that process to create the plan. One thing that we also really heard was we would like to identify metrics for a majority of the items that we're working on so that we could report back, but also really know how are we moving the needle, are we moving the needle, and get those results. We really wanted to have a good amount of public participation as well, so we talked through some of those ideas. And then, again, towards the end of 2017, we put together a request for proposals to seek that outside facilitation and kind of plan development, and had a committee kind of reviewing those proposals. And we ultimately decided on the Portland State University. They have a Center for Public Service, and they do a number of consulting projects. And we entered into a contract with PSU to help guide us through the process. And we kicked off in early January with focus groups. So we sought out and had advertisements, and we had some really great discussions with the community. It says community and staff, but those were separate. So we had some focus groups for the community members, focus groups for staff to really get at, do you know about the plan? If you do, how do you use it? How do you know about it? You know, where do you see Lane County in the future? What's important to you in your area and your community? And so that really led the kickoff. And then we came together as kind of our leadership team with the commissioners, directors, key management staff, and it was also open to the public as well, and really spent a good portion of the entire day kicking that off and going through some examples and activities to really narrow down, taking in some of that public feedback, but kind of narrowing down what some of those priorities were for the future. PSU also helped us with administering a couple surveys as well. So we had surveys for employees and a different set of survey questions for the community. The community survey was also translated into Spanish and out there for our residents as well. We had really good success rate from the survey. We had, I believe it was around 653 employees that participated in, and that's just over half of our entire FTE for the county. So a really great turnout for that. About 792 folks that responded to the community survey. And then through several board work sessions, open houses, back and forth, PSU did some several presentations to the board and heard back from the community on what that draft plan looked like. And then ultimately we did adopt the plan March 20th of 2008. So there's just a couple pictures of one of the focus groups that we had with the community members. And then the other graphic is some of the responses. This was from PSU in terms of the geographic distribution of those for community surveys.
Look at that dark one on Florence. I wonder who might have solicited input from their constituents.
Don't tell me. What do you think?
And again, I'm going to talk through a little bit more about the packet in your materials, but also on our website, there's a lot of information. One is reports, and it's a good summary if you're ever interested in, what were some of the results for the community focus groups, what were the results of the surveys. We have those reports posted on our website as well. I know you've been introduced to our strategic plan, but in addition to developing priorities for the next few years, we also used the survey effort and really honed in on several items that we wanted to also update for the Lane County organization as well. And that is adding a purpose. So that is to improve lives. And it's really that connection for all staff throughout the county to really have a connection with each other, as we are in many different kind of silos in every department, but we all are striving and achieving to really improve lives and have that kind of combined purpose. Our mission stayed largely the same. We did add, we responsibly manage available resources to deliver vital, community-centered services with passion, drive, and focus. Our values before, we had 7 values, and not many could remember what those values are, and so we often said, what's the value of having so many values if we don't know what those are? So really we focused in with the survey results for our employees on narrowing, they were prioritizing what those values were, and these are the 3 that were significantly rose to the top: so integrity, excellence, equity, and respect. And then finally, our core behaviors are new as well. So it's really looking at what our employees exhibit, what do we want to exhibit for our future employees, and bringing in new employees. And it's really these 3 core behaviors of a passion to serve, driven to connect, and focused on solutions. And then this is a one-pager. So this is your attachment A in your packet. And I also have laminated copies that I can hand out that have been updated as well. But it's just kind of a nice one-pager of the plan that we did adopt to really kind of capture what are the main priorities. So we have the 4: safe, healthy county, vibrant communities, robust infrastructure, and the 4th one that we added that we've talked about before is our people and partnerships, and really calling those out specifically in this new plan to have its own priority. Our people and our partnerships were somewhat wrapped up in the infrastructure priority in the last plan, and we really wanted to call that out, split it out, and emphasize the importance of our people and partnerships. And then just briefly, the layout, as you can see, we've got a large plan. We have a number of initiatives we're working on, and this is just highlighting some of those key strategic initiatives under each of those 4 priorities. And then I'll talk a little bit more about what comes below that in just a minute. And then some of the work that's happened once we did adopt the plan was really implementing our communication plan. And so getting the material out there, speaking with staff. Steve, our county administrator, had over 25 meetings with staff and several key work groups from every department to really introduce the new strategic plan, our new core behaviors, and walk through kind of how each work group fits in with that new plan and calling that out. We've also spent some of the time kind of refining the process on how we're going to be tracking this in the future. And so this is, again, our 2nd quarterly update. We did take a little bit of time when it was adopted in March to take that time to really set it up so that we're hoping that it's working right and tracking for the future. And then I also wanted to describe a little bit of the detail that's also in your board packet. So in addition to the strategic initiatives that I mentioned that we've identified 47 key activity areas. And so those are a little bit more specific items under each of those initiatives that really are addressing what are we working on. And then we started from there and really assigned, who's the champion for some of these things, assigned a lead, assigned a sponsor for these items, and then each of those leads created their own work plans. And so for you and for the ease of the public to kind of follow along in how we're progressing, we've created one-page work plan summaries, and I just wanted to kind of show you. And again, this is attachment C, which is, I think I added page numbers to make it a little easier. So this is pages 11 through 55. So this is a one page for each of those 47 activity areas that we're working on. That just is a nice one-page summary. Again, the leads may have additional packets, additional plans, but this is really a high level of what are the progress, what's happening in each of these areas. And the circles up there are when you're looking at the plan, you can identify, okay, this is number 1, A2, to follow along, just so that you can kind of capture those 47 items. If you're trying to refer to just one, that's how you can look at those. And then towards the middle of the page, we have, what are 5 or 6 key initiatives or milestones, if you will, in terms of making good progress on a particular activity area. And then the overall status towards the bottom of the page gets put on a one-page summary to really highlight, out of all these 47 items, 4 priority areas, just kind of a quick snapshot. How are we doing? So these are updated on every quarter. And again, I have a copy that I can hand out with that laminated copy. Just, it's nice to have a reference to, we're doing 47 different things. What are we specifically doing with, any one particular item? So it's a nice quick guide to see how we're doing. And that's attachment D in your packet. And then again, as Steve mentioned, this is my last slide, and then I'll turn it over to the others to present. We do have that annual work session planned for mid-March, and so we're looking at a couple possible dates, but it's generally a work session where we can take a little bit more time, maybe 90 minutes at least or so, and really kind of, rather than just a quick update, you'll be getting the update. We're also going to be attaching metrics to these at that time. So it's having staff on an annual basis updating metrics related to that. So you'll be getting that material, and then the work session is really to, are some of these completed items that just naturally would fall off the plan? Are there additional ones that, addressing the climate action plan perhaps? Bringing additional items is the one of the best times to do it is kind of this annual work session, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And then I will continue doing quarterly updates to you throughout the progress of this plan. And then we can talk about any other changes, but it was nice hearing from different presenters last time when I did the quarterly update, to hear from our staff who are doing all of this work and putting all the effort in to make progress towards our goals. So rather than hear a quick update from me, I would love to turn it over now. And we're going to have 4 guest presenters. And if you wanted to follow along, again, in your packet, I put the page numbers. So we're going to be hearing from Nathleen Frenner first, and she's going to be talking about 1D1, which is really the adult and youth parole and probation activity area. So I'd like to invite Nathleen up to the table.
All right, good morning. So I'm here to discuss with you the part that adult and the youth probation services falls under the safe and healthy county, and the stuff that Donovan is not here today, and he's the division manager of adult parole and probation, and I'm Nathleen Frenner over youth services. And the parts that we were really able to come together to talk about ways that we could improve our community and to create a safer community is to really look at our probation services. And so both for adult and for youth, probation services really falls into line with looking at how many people are being incarcerated, and I'm going to use those terms generally, but when I talk about that, I'm talking about for adults and for youth. Ways that we can really incentivize the behaviors that we're wanting to see in our community and de-emphasize the other ones that we're hoping to not be seeing in our community. And so we're working on that. We really look to evidence-based practices, both for adult and juveniles, to see how we can keep that work moving forward in our community, and to really create diversion opportunities when it's appropriate to do so, and to be able to focus on doing all of our resources to our highest needs and highest needs people. So I want to tell you about some work that adult parole and probation is doing in those, and then I'll talk to you about for youth. Donovan's really done a lot of work regarding the Justice Involved Women's Initiative, and they've added on 3 officers that are specifically working with women. We know that men and women have different needs in the adult system when they're involved in criminality, and different needs that we need to address. And so Donovan has 3 officers and a victim advocate really working closely in that area to really strengthen that. Staff went to training from some national experts about what it is to work with women who are involved in the justice system. And in addition to that, they implemented a specialized women's risk needs assessment. A lot of the assessments that are out there and all kinds of even medical and criminal justice are based on men. And so to really take the time to really be able to look at what are women's needs around that and have an assessment specifically for that. In the juvenile, one of the things that we committed to doing was reviewing our program service matrix to increase diversion opportunities and to allow our intervention to be at the lowest appropriate level possible. And so we've had a program service matrix for some years now, and we do an annual update on that, and just completed one and had a lot of staff involvement in that and community involvement in that as well, to get feedback about the ways that we can best work with youth moving through our system so that we can make sure that everybody who's coming into our system is being treated equitably, and that we're able to respond appropriately. That's what I have. Thank you.
Okay. We can turn it over if you wanted to have questions while Nathleen's up here. Feel free to do that, or you can take them at the end. Okay. So then I would like to call Stephen Nelson up to the table, and he is our procurement supervisor to talk about 2C3, which is really some focus efforts in the procurement area.
Good morning. Board Chair, Commissioners, thank you for your time. Again, I'm Steve Nelson. I have the pleasure of working in finance with a great group of people. I also supervise the RSV program, which a couple of you came to the luncheon for that. So I've been at Lane County for a little over a year. Prior to that, Lane County really didn't have any equity or diversity initiatives in the procurement process, and we've been working to try to change that. I think this is important for our community as a whole to spur the development of communities that have been historically underutilized. So over the past months, we've outreached to different organizations such as the NAACP, Central Latino Professionals Connect, SCORE, VetNet, and the Asian Business Council. We are also active members of what is called the Contract Alliance for Diversity and Equity, which includes area agencies, the City of Eugene, City of Springfield, eWeb, University of Oregon, LTD, and LCC. We sit on the steering committee for that group, and we help kind of guide the direction of it. I'm also currently the chair for the Oregon Public Purchasing Association Diversity Committee. We have also participated in local events, the City of Eugene Supplier Summit, the University of Oregon Vendor Showcase, the Contract Office for Business Inclusion and Diversity, which is called COBID, which I'm going to mention that acronym later, so please don't, I'm trying to give you that before. Coming from the military, I was acronym heavy, so I'm trying to get past that. We also spoke at the Asia Pacific Islander Appreciation Week last year. Additionally, Lane County has taken the lead on some educational opportunities for our local community vendors. We partner with GCAP and SCORE to provide educational sessions on general procurement for government request for proposals, invitation to bid, and we're planning to do some more educational sessions in the future. We also created trainings for internal staff and discussed the underutilized business initiatives that we're going to be pushing along, and we hosted a diversity sack lunch on the same subject. It's important to note that, coming to Lane County only a year, we've had a lot of support from different offices. The Equity and Diversity Coordinator has been extremely helpful. The Operations Director, Public Information Officer, the Economic Development Office, and the Eugene City Chamber of Commerce have also been helpful. So some of the good things that we've seen since we've started, you'll have actually some retainer contracts coming before you next week for approval. Of those 8 contracts, 3 of those will be co-bid certified vendors. Prior to that, there were 0 co-bid certified vendors in those retainer contracts. We also manage very few contracts, but one of the contracts that we have is with the Office Depot. We've asked that vendor to start tracking our minority, women, emerging small business spend. In the past couple months, we've spent about $1,500 with those different companies. We've asked to try to increase the usage of that. So we have some other things going on. One thing that I would like to say is thanks to the partnerships and outreach that we've had, we've been involved this year. Lane County is actually sponsoring the Asian celebration, and their committee has asked that as they would find it, they would be honored if any or all of the commissioners would be there for their opening ceremonies on February 16th to help them kick off the event. That's about it for me.
Thank you. We may have questions. I think we'd like to get through all of the programs. I have a lot of questions, so please don't go away, but I'd like to make sure we get the other presentations in.
Sure, I can't just run out the door now, because that's what I was planning to do.
You can go out the door, just keep an eye through the window. Yeah, a good idea.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
Would it be, I don't know, would it be more beneficial for us to ask someone questions when they're here so they can leave and go to work?
Well, the
Or no, I
the
just
problem
don't know.
is it's a great thing, and we got 3 ex-chairs and 1 current chair here already, so, you know.
I don't know.
No, it's really something that we need to work out. I mean, there is no good way to do it, because if we don't let all the people present, we may not get all the information. See, we may be behind in the
Would
schedule.
it be easier for you if we ask now, or does it not matter?
Well, Commissioner, the presentations are only 4 minutes, so I think I can stick around for 8 more minutes.
Okay, all right, let's.
Our bosses are kind of.
Yeah, no, that's good. Just so that the ex-chairs know, I like to get the staff presentation. I like to get the staff to make their presentation so that it's all a context. And then I like to get the discussion and have plenty of time for the discussion. So next up, our Parks Manager, Brett Henry. Go ahead and say what you need to say about the.
He's going to be walking through 3B5 again, which is page 38 if you wanted to follow along, but really talking about the progress on the Parks Master Plan. Thank you, Brett.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners, and welcome. A warm welcome to 2 new commissioners. And so I'm going to give you just a little bit of background since you're new to this. Recently, the Park System Master Plan was adopted on December 18th. It was a long process. Our last master plan was back in 1980. So it's been about a 40-year process for this to happen. And really what the master plan is, it's a guiding document that gives us a vision for our park system for the next 20 years. So these are 20-year plans. And so we have a pretty large and diverse park system. Lane County manages 68 parks throughout a very geographically diverse county, and it's a tremendous challenge. So this master plan is really vital to us as we plan for the future. And so the strategic priority is the robust infrastructure and the key strategic initiatives to maintain existing facilities and identify efficiencies and capital assets. And as I said earlier, the activity areas to adopt and implement a new park system master plan. So I identify some key partners that made this happen. Our Parks Advisory Committee, made up of 7 members representing the different communities throughout the county. They were very key in keeping this going, the momentum going, and want to recognize them. The Master Plan Task Force, they met numerous times, and there was a lot of transition going on amongst our department and our division, and they represented different communities and added quite a bit to the document. The Friends of Buford Park, Howard Buford Recreation Area is our largest and most visited park, and it wouldn't be what it is without their assistance. So the Friends of Buford Park are a huge part of our contingency, moving our mission forward, and they contributed quite a bit to the master plan. The McKenzie River Trust is an excellent organization, and there's some others as well that I'm not mentioning today. So the start date with this, and I'm kind of shifted it because the plan was adopted in December of 2018, and so with this being a 20-year plan, the end date would be December of 2038 to implement the master plan. So to accomplish our goals, I do want to mention that we are going to need some additional dedicated funding for our park system in our staffing to implement the master plan. And we will be working on that with the PAC and with the public and commissioners as well. Some projects that were completed, we solicited quite a bit of public feedback through an online survey and community forums. We incorporated that feedback and went back into our final draft of our master plan. We solicited feedback from other stakeholder groups, which again included the PAC, the Master Plan Task Force, Board of County Commissioners, and then the plan again was officially adopted into the county's Rural Comprehensive Plan on December 18th of last year. So now we're shifting into the implementation phase, and park staff is currently working with our Parks Advisory Committee on action plans. The action plans are 2 to 3 year plans as we move forward and decide how to prioritize our different projects. These can be capital and non-capital projects. So we had a Parks Advisory Committee meeting last night. We talked a little bit about the action plans and when to initiate this process. The consensus was to look at a fall time period to coincide with the preparation of our budget and our CIP, our capital improvement plan. So this gives us some time to formulate our action plans as we move forward to implement the master plan. So lastly, we will continue to leverage additional partnerships and agencies and stakeholders as we continue to maximize our resources to implement the master plan. And I will hang around for a little while if you guys have any questions concerning this initiative. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Brett. And then I would like to finally call up Mary Miller and Alana Holmes. Mary Miller is our benefits manager, and she's going to be addressing employee wellness. And Alana Holmes is the HR director.
Good morning, Chair Sorensen, commissioners. I'm really excited to be here today with Mary Miller, our Wellness and Benefits Manager, to discuss the strategic initiatives regarding wellness and resilience here at the county. But first, I wanted to just share a couple of other items before Mary launches into her piece. You know, I've just been reflecting on, I've been here now for 13 months, and when I had an opportunity to come over here, one of the things that I did, like many, is talk to folks that were working here to hear from them. What did they think about their experience, and how could that help me in my decision-making? And a lot of the comments, you know, were regarding things like vision, leadership, building teams, working with folks that were proud and passionate about their work, and really the overarching pieces around the components of an organization culture, the county culture. And so obviously that was very intriguing to me, and was very excited to come over, and as excited today as I was a year ago. And so when you think about organizational culture, and when you think about some focus areas that we're working on right now, such as recruitment and retention of quality candidates and talent, one of the items or data points that we look at is the turnover rate from year to year. And so in this past year, our turnover rate was a little less than 11%, which I think is a great indicator on the success regarding the work done in the organization to retain our employees, especially when you know our labor market out there is very highly competitive. And people are choosing to stay, which I think reflects on us continuing to be considered an employer of choice in the region. And to do that, we always are having to stay relevant and do work to help, continue work on our culture. And some of the areas that we're working on that you'll hear about more in detail, I'm sure, at a future date, are some strategic planning initiatives around employee engagement and work being done in areas, for example, like career development opportunities, mentorship programs, things of that sort. But all of that is combined to continue to allow us to be that employer of choice, to continue to work on attracting quality candidates and retaining employees once they come on board, because we value that talent. And so these types of initiatives, coupled with the work done to build resilience and well-being, are really crucial in continuing to have a very vibrant and healthy workforce. And so I just wanted to kind of just plant that piece before I'm turning it over now to Mary so she can talk about the strategies in the wellness area.
Thank you, Alana. Thank you, Chair Sorensen, Vice Chair Buck, and commissioners. It's always a great opportunity to come and talk to you about employee wellness at Lane County. And with the strategic plan, we have a good framework to report back to you with. So first of all, I'd like to, looking at our chart for how we're going to encourage employee wellness, I'd like to point out that we did go tobacco-free in all of Lane County on October 1st, and that was due to the efforts of many, many people that are in the room and not in the room. And as a follow-up to that, our Live Well Center for Employees is doing coaching for employees that want to quit using tobacco. Next, mindfulness. We are offering on-site mindfulness practice in our parole and probation department. We've helped 45 participants in those sessions to quiet their minds, relax, and be present. We've hired a behavioral health counselor. She started in November, and she's providing one-on-one counseling at the Live Well Center. She has many initial and repeat sessions already on her schedule. We use the Wellness Council of America benchmarks, which is WellCOA, to identify and evaluate the needed interventions. So we want to make sure that we have some rigor and some science behind what we're doing. And so future projects that we're using following this benchmark include expanded financial wellness. Right now, we do have TIAA coming in regularly to offer financial counseling. 55% of our employees are contributing to our 457 plan, but we want to do more around wellness for our employees, and it could be things regarding student loan debt and savings, improving credit. So that is something that we're looking at very eagerly for 2019. We're also looking at generational health education with an emphasis on our employees who are age 47 and better. That's over half our workforce. We are also wanting to increase our biometric screenings this year. We already have over 70% of our employees participating in biometric screenings, but we can do better. We want to get that number up. And then we also want to increase employee engagement with the Live Well Center. Currently, we have 64% of our employees are engaged through coaching or acute care, and we want to get that number up as well. This category is about people and partnerships, so I would like to mention we have many, many partners that help us with our success. Not to leave anyone out, but we use the Hartford Pacific Source, USI, Marathon, Innova, Delta Dental, Willamette Dental Group, TIAA, International Fitness, Court Sports, IMED, QVI, which is a female-owned organization in Bend, Regents, our public health department from Lane County, U.S. Wellness, we have a Live Well committee, and we also use the highest group. So we've got some great partners, and I would put probably our bargaining units at the top of that list as well. In closing, I think Alana had mentioned that, we're really focused on resiliency, and resiliency is the ability to bounce back from a challenge, and I think that's something Lane County is very good at and will continue to improve. And lastly, if I may, I would just like to acknowledge the passing of Mr. Reginald Jensen. I recently learned that he passed away in October, and he was a wellness advocate for Lane County employees, and just somebody that really made us do some deep thinking in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think the commissioners, I'm sure, have plenty of questions and comments, and I guess I'll start it off since Ms. Miller's here, and certainly I'll invite the commissioners to ask questions of any of the presenters, or even both Mr. Mokrahysky and Ms. Williams. But I wanted to ask a question about the sort of productivity measurements that are probably there with, I'm going there and I'm getting coached and I'm getting healthier as a result of this. And I know that for the public to follow this, Lane County has been awarded a bunch of awards now for how healthy we're getting because of the whole program. But I want to be kind of not a devil's advocate, but an angel's advocate, and say, can you give me some numbers that shows that things are better in terms of productivity? Not in terms of how healthy Pete is. That's great for Pete and his family, Pete Sorensen. But I'm talking about the productivity for Lane County employees. Is there any measurements out there that say, if you ride your bike as much as Mr. Mokrahysky, you'll be a better county employee? If you exercise, if you eat better, if you meditate, if you're mindful, you have a higher productivity? Or is it just common sense? I know I am, So what do you say to that?
What do I say is it's both. So we had the good fortune a couple of years ago, we had a 3 p.m. student from the U of O come in, and she did some work with us. It was really pretty kind of thought-leading work on the correlation between engagement and someone who has a wellness focus for themselves. So we found with the work that she did and with the data that we collected that there is a significant correlation between an employee's health-seeking behavior, meaning they want to be healthy, they want to ride their bike, they want to, cut out fried foods, that type of thing, with their engagement. And we know that engaged employees tend to be more productive employees. So there's a lot of information out there on that. And interestingly enough, I remember when Mr. Jensen gave me the RAND study, which had a lot of that same kind of information in it. So there is, and just the whole mindfulness, the presentee, if you're present at work, you're more focused, you're more able to produce and perform.
What about something like the number of workers' comp claims? We had X 100 or 1,000 over a period of time, and now we're all healthier, we're healthier, we're doing better, we're getting awards. And what about that? Lower workers' comp claims. Something, I'm looking for something that is measurable.
Okay, and so am I. And one of the things that we're looking at, a correlation, it's still I think we can get really close, but a correlation between employees' health scores. And again, this is all aggregate data. We never want to say Pete Sorensen healthy, Pete Sorensen productive, Vice Chair Buck not healthy, but we don't want to go there.
Yeah.
We want to do it in aggregates. So
we both appreciate that.
Yes, yes.
Go there. No, I'm
Yes,
just kidding.
Joe Bernie, not sure. So just, so we want to do it in aggregate, and one of the things that we're looking at is when employees do their health risk assessment, they get a health score. So what we're trying to do is work with Marathon to get an aggregate health score, and then to try to do some correlation with our attendance. And attendance for, attendance that is not related to, I guess I'm trying to say the opposite of people missing work. We do have very generous TM benefits at Lane County, time management. We also manage the leaves program through my team, and we're trying to see if there's some correlation between that, because someone out on a leave is either taking care of someone that's ill or they themselves are ill. So that is something we're looking at.
Yeah.
So I hopefully stay tuned, and we'll have more on that.
Excellent. Okay, let's start down here and move this way. Commissioner
So really
Bozovich.
quick, I'm glad Mary is still up here because that's who I had the question for. And I first want to say Mary Miller is a rock star. I mean,
Thank you.
got to look at, where we were, a while back, and now 2 years in a row, the healthiest large public employer in Oregon, and then hitting the, number 40 in the top 100 in the nation last year, speaks a lot, that we're doing so well with our wellness. I have two questions, but I'll start with the first one. I attended the Labor Management Advisory Committee on Friday, and they specifically talk about a piece of legislation proposed around first responders and disabilities due to stress claims, and a lot of discussion around that. You talked a little bit about some of the, we got this mental health person in the clinic, and we're starting to do some wellness with parole and probation, which is great because those folks deal with a lot of stress. But do we have accessible to our first responders that work for the county, and I would include even some of our public works guys in that, a mental health provider that is experienced with first responders? Because that was one of the things I heard both the representatives for the firefighters and representatives for the police officers talk about. There's a need to have somebody that understands the specific dimensions that the PTSD and the other stress-related issues that come with being a first responder.
Great question, and I think I have a very good answer, too. When Marathon was sourcing the behavioral health counselor for the Live Well Center, one of the preferred experiences that they wanted that person to have is working with first responders. The person that they selected worked with, in the Oregon area, worked with the Umpqua Community College first responders, so that really was something that she is experienced in. She's also planning ride-alongs with our for public safety folks, so she can get a better idea of what they're dealing with. So that was one of the prime reasons that we included that in the interview search.
Yeah, interesting that particular incident came up in testimony on Friday because there was a spike in some of the statistics due to that incident for the Special Districts Association. My second question kind of relates to what Commissioner Sorensen Chair Sorensen was speaking about, and I think this is probably where we can look for a metric that we can relate to our wellness program. What has our claims experience and cost been relative to our health insurance as a self-insured entity, and what is our expectation for an increase in this upcoming budget? What's our assumption?
Well, our claims experience is, we're running below expected. So when you go work with an insurance company, Pacific Source in this instance, and they have what they expect the claims would be based on our group, they come up with a number, we're running below that. And so because of that, and because of all the, our employees seeking wellness and taking these opportunities, our claim costs will be flat for the upcoming budget year. So that's tremendous. That is a trend that most employers are not seeing.
Yeah, I would stand it up against just about any employer in the nation. I think, how many years in a row has that been flat?
or in the current fiscal year, we actually increased rates, I think, 1.5%.
Okay.
Our consultants advised us to increase them higher than that. And we disagreed, and we thought we could do better, and so we set them at 1.5, and we've beat that. So they've actually, our claims experience this current, in the last, I think in 2018, has come below what we had set, which was below what our consultants had said. So it gives you an idea of the great work that has been done.
1.5% flat, that's unheard of. So I just want to say bravo.
And we are getting we have a stop-loss policy that if our claims run below expected, we get a refund, and we've gotten that refund 2 years in a row. So we expect to continue getting that.
Like I said, you're a rock star.
Yes, thank you. Back at you.
Kansas's loss, Oregon's gain.
Wait, what? Oh.
Her mind is
Talking
on.
about the Chiefs.
Go for it.
I had several questions, but I'm afraid to talk to rock stars. So. Mary, when you talked about age 47 and better, I assume that means the older you are, the better you are. So I just want you to know
exactly.
I'm far better than age 47.
Yes.
I think that I would agree with Commissioner Bozovic. I think the claim cost is the strongest quantitative indicator that I believe Chair Sorensen was looking for. And is that an apple or a ball?
Who's bouncing it?
This is my resiliency ball. So it's the ability to bounce back. So
So I just fell right into that.
If I try to toss it to you, Joe, I might hit you.
Well, when I grew up, we watched songs and followed the bouncing ball, so I was listening to you. Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
I have no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Burney.
Okay, go for it.
I don't have many questions. I just now fully appreciate everything that you spoke about because we just went through it ourselves as new members of the county. So, but I do appreciate all 4 different subjects here and getting to know them a little bit better. And as I come out and visit and tour these places, I may come up with, more questions at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have hundreds of questions. However, this is not the right venue for me to ask them, so I'm not going to. I'm just going to ask you, could you go back to the one-pager, this document right here? And rather than ask the questions that I do have, which I get answered on a regular basis, by the way, and thank you for that. But if you look at the strategic priorities, strategic initiatives, when we hired Steve Mokrahysky, one of the very first things that we talked about was developing a strategic plan. And in my past lives as in private industry and other governments and in boards and nonprofits, strategic planning was always an integral part of making certain that everybody in the organization was basically reading from the same page. And I think throughout the 4 years that we've been, a little over 4 years, we've been working on and with the strategic plan, we've done a very good job of making certain that everybody's able to see the priorities, the initiatives, and more significantly, contribute to the tactics that are involved in carrying forward the initiatives and priorities. And as we look at the tactics, there are hundreds and hundreds. It's dynamic. It changes on a regular basis. And to ask questions about tactics is kind of slowing the process down a little bit. So we won't go there, but I'll congratulate you, Mr. Mokrahysky, on doing exactly what we talked about. A strategic plan should contain a clearly stated and universally understood mission or value statement and a small number of goal areas, which are supported by organizational, operational and directional goals. And we've done a good job of doing that, and the tactics, which are dynamic and reported on regularly by Ms. Williams and supported by staff, are amazing. But the most important thing I'm going to point out on this, and we have some people in the room here who I want to really emphasize that Dan Bryant take a look at this and that Steve Manello take a look at this. And if you look at strategic priority 1 is a safe and healthy community. Strategic priority number 1A, which puts it at the very top of the hierarchy of everything that we do, is affordable housing and homelessness. So that's all I wanted to point out, is that our 1A strategic priority and tactic is affordable housing and homelessness. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to ask another question, and this involves Mr. Nelson's area, so I'll thank you guys for your role. And I'll ask Mr. Nelson, I guess you're in the box that says, among other things, resilient, diverse, and sustainable economy, equity, the natural environment. I know you don't deal with all that in your work, but just in the procurement conversation that I know you're really zeroed in on, how can we buy things that don't do as much damage to the environment? You know, I'm thinking of some restaurants you go to, they have paper towels, and some you go to and they have cloth, and they say, you know, we have cloth because we don't want to have as many paper towels. That's always confused me, because don't you have to wash the, anyway. So there's a lot of complexity to that, but how can we be greener in the way we buy things in Lane County?
So currently, we don't have a specific kind of goal on that. We do push through to our vendors that we would like greener solutions. Some of the supplies that we use in facilities, that we buy for facilities, those are Green Star items. So we make sure that our vendors at least source.
Is that a term of art, Green Star, or is that?
Green would be a green certified item within the state of Oregon. So we try to make sure that our contracts are large contracts, Office Depot, Staples, that we buy green sustainable items.
Mm-hmm. And I know there's a tension between buying local and buying lower in price. And
so there's
several hundred years ago, I was a senator in the legislature, and believe me, there's on the one hand, you know, the legislature wants us to buy lower cost items, and that makes sense, right? Why pay more than you need? You shouldn't. You should buy them at a lower price. But on the other hand, the legislature also is giving a nod to buy local. And so I'm curious, how can we use Lane County's procurement process to help the local economy?
So I believe the actions that we're taking right now are benefiting our local economy. I'm in the same boat as I believe that the area that you geographically basically take up, you should be trying to benefit that area. And so with what we have going right now, you do obviously have to make that pricing decision. As if something is 4 times more expensive at the local level, does it make sense because it is taxpayer funds to go to a cheaper option? We have to make those decisions on a day-to-day basis. A lot of that is made by the great people who do the day-to-day procurement. But we are definitely trying to explore those avenues of propping up our local economy, propping up our local vendors, and the historically underutilized vendors.
Now, is this box on the Vibrant, and I know this is beyond maybe your daily job, but is this box, the Vibrant Communities, is that the place where we would build in a sustainability or climate change component to our strategic plan?
I would defer that to Judy. She would have a lot more knowledge, or the county administrator.
Okay.
I would just add, so you are in the the correct priority area, the vibrant community, and we do have the strategic initiatives of the natural environment for sure. We also have one specific work plan item, 2B2, and it is to maintain and improve air quality, water quality, waste management, land use, and parks by identifying resources and stewardship planning in the areas of transportation, facilities, waste management, and procurement. And so that is one activity area that's I believe winter, they're scheduling an initial meeting, but it's just, there's a lot of great success. You know, for instance, the waste management division has a phenomenal amount of resources in terms of reducing and recycling, and some of the work that they've been doing, we can collaborate a little bit more with the procurement side and talk a little bit more about like green procurement. And so those discussions are happening. It is one particular item that I think could fit with what you're suggesting, maybe like in addition to that, a piece of that related to the climate action plan.
I know the world leaders have been meeting in, Japan and Brazil and Paris and now in Poland, and climate change ideas of how national governments and even state and local governments can help meet a lower amount of carbon put into the atmosphere. Board of Commissioners has never really discussed that too much, and we're getting a discussion on the 29th of January, how could we, if we wanted to, that's a big if, but if we wanted to implement some of those international targets into our own strategic plan, how would we do that?
I think, like I was saying, that there's going to be a meeting that's happening. It says winter 2019. So those, Dan Hurley, the Public Works Director, is the team lead on that specific item. And so once those meetings start to take place, I think, you know, hearing from the feedback from this meeting could bring that to the discussion, and we would have an update for you in March at the next update, and also kind of talk about what his vision is too with that team, and see if there's, is that going to be satisfactory, or do we add another work plan item specifically around something like that?
Okay, thank you. Why don't we start with you, Commissioner Burney, and then go around one more time. Anybody has anything?
I'm sorry, I was just gonna pick up on that. I would like, you know, just speaking for myself, I would like to, are there currently diversity, environmental impact, and local hire priorities and targets as it relates to procurement in this county, countywide?
So, as I mentioned before, as it relates to procurement, we really didn't have anything prior to.
Oh, understood.
We are in the infancy of it, and so we do have some aspirational targets we would like to hit, but nothing that's concrete. A lot of times what happens is, we've talked to a lot of different entities, people set kind of unrealistic target goals, and they continually undermeet it. The utilization for the University of Oregon for their COVID vendors is about 2% right now. Metro, from the area that I came from, they had set a 20% utilization. I don't think they ever got over 9%. And that's in a very much more diverse area than Lane County sits in. And so with those in mind, one of our plans is to go out for a survey and use and kind of leverage our partners to figure out what is available in our local area. What can we do the best with, and then put those goals in place.
Thank you, sir. And also, I wanted to let you know that it's going to be the will of the commission. I don't know that yet, but if in fact we have community benefits agreements, we'll probably need to coordinate with you, because specific aspects of those are recruiting amongst women, minorities, and veterans for participation in the labor force. And if you're not familiar with the Helmets to Hard Hats program, that's one we'll see, but I'll propose that we use. So I just wanted you to know that, and thank you very much. And when is the Asian Festival date that you mentioned?
The Asian Festival is February 16th and 17th, but they requested that if any of you commissioners would be available to just be there for the opening ceremony, they'd be extremely honored. I've been going to a couple of their meetings.
I've done it several times, and it's really a great event. It's one of the largest community events in Lane County. It's huge. It's at the fairgrounds, and there's great participation. A lot of the Asian countries have their consulates represented. It's a big event, not to mention our own local population that's really huge. So anything further from anyone else that wants to make any comments about the strategic plan and the update? Okay, very good. We'll move on. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks our friends in parks as well, and wellness and youth services. Thank you. Okay, I mentioned we pulled item 7B, and do you want to move on to the next one?
I was just going to make a suggestion. I've been tracking the folks in the room, and I think we have representatives from all 5 of the recommended grant awardees. So if you want to move those up, the only folks here that need to be here for the courthouse are really myself and Mr. Dingle. So no harm in pushing that one off if you would like to accommodate the.
Okay, so that would be item 8A. Okay, so let's pass over item 7C for the moment, and we'll go to item 8A. And I just want to introduce this briefly by saying that we've got 2 items that award different contracts, and the full board will be taking up item 8A. But my understanding is that that Commissioner Buck will be making an announcement on item 8B, and she won't be participating on item 8B. But 8A, which we'll now go to, is Order 19-01-15-06 in the matter of awarding housing improvement plan grants for permanent supportive housing and affordable housing development for the Department of Health and Human Services Division, authorizing the county administrator to sign the resulting contracts. And with us to discuss this item are Steve Mokrahysky, Lane County Administrator, Steve Manella, Lane County Human Services Program Manager, and many people in the audience that we really appreciate all of your hard work and dedication in these areas. So I'll call on Mr. Mokrahysky to introduce this item, and we'll hear from both Steve and Steve.
Steve M. and Steve M. I was actually marking the slides here for who was going to do what, and I realized I'm marking them all Steve M. It's not helping at all. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will, as we go through and share with you, we have a little presentation here with the recommended grant awards and then some renderings that have been provided. I'll ask the representatives from the agencies just to raise their hands so that you know that they're in the room. If you have questions for them about particular projects, that's certainly your call to allow for that. Before we get started, I wanted to recognize Robin Scott, who is here. And Robin, would you just raise your hand for the folks in the room? Robin is a program services coordinator in our Health and Human Services Department in Steve Manila's Division of Human Services. And she's really been instrumental in helping us not only manage this grant process, which has been new, but do it in a really quick time frame. And so I just want to thank Robin for her incredible work to move this forward. So we, in the current fiscal year 18-19 budget, we proposed in the budget committee and the board approved a $2 million fund. This was $2 million in Secure Rural Schools funding that we received. It was unexpected one-time funding in Secure Rural Schools, and we recognize that we don't want to invest one-time resources into ongoing operational costs, and so we said, how do we invest these resources in addition to building our reserves and paying off debt and all these other things? How can we put some money into the community in areas that align with the board's strategic priorities? And so we developed this concept to create essentially an incentive fund to seed projects in the community focused on permanent supportive housing, and with these goals in mind, that we would seed and incentivize permanent supportive housing and increase the supply of affordable housing, that these funds would be used to spark investment and to leverage other funds. So this wasn't going to be Lane County going it alone and 100% funding projects, but that we would bring money to the table and incentivize others to leverage funds from other agencies to partner with various entities, and that we would move quickly. We didn't want this to be a time-consuming bureaucratic process that was the process itself was overly laborious. We wanted it to be accountable and structured and transparent and objective, but to be quick with clearly defined outcomes, budgets, and timelines to catalyze shovel-ready projects. So we wanted this, and of the 90, I believe 90 plus units that are being proposed to be funded here, approximately half of those will be constructed within the course of the next year, and approximately the other half will be constructed, we anticipate, within the next 2 years. So those are the goals that we set out with, and this again aligns with Lane County's strategic plan. You just got a good briefing on that, so I won't go over all of it, but within this area of safe and healthy county, the board has established a strategy to increase housing options for residents to reduce the incidence of homelessness and increase affordability, and specifically to identify and implement programs for supportive housing, short-term transitional housing, as well as long-term permanent solutions to address homelessness. So this effort really helps to achieve that priority and goal set by the board. In addition, the Poverty and Homelessness Board strategic plan calls out the need for the availability and access to coordinated supportive housing, shelter, and services, and the goal to create 600 additional housing units by 2021 for chronically homeless individuals and people with specific particular needs. So we are presenting to you today, and there are 2 items. We're going to do this presentation all under this first item, and then we've separated out for the benefit of Commissioner Buck, the item that has a connection to St. Vincent de Paul, which is item 8B. We are proposing 1.5. What we did is in, I believe it was October, October of 2018, we released 1.5 of the $2 million for community grants. And we asked for proposals. We didn't put any limit on what people could ask for, but we did say we want permanent supportive housing units as well as some other criteria. So that 1.5 million was put out, and then $500,000 was allocated to the Commons on MLK. That's a 51-unit permanent supportive housing project that has funding from the state, from low-income tax credits, and from various community partners.
And last night, the Eugene City Council approved $900,000 in support of the project.
For the Commons at MLK.
Commons, yeah.
So that project is should be near completion in terms of identifying the financing needed to move that forward. We'll talk about that. So these are the 5 projects here. The total, the $2 million allocation. You see at the top sponsors, the project name, and we'll show you some renderings of this. The sponsors, Tiny Home Community. It's a approximately $1.5 million total project cost. We are recommending $200,000 in HIP funds, and that will generate a total of 10 units focused on homeless singles with conviction histories. The second proposal is from NEDCO. This is the Polk Apartments expansion, a total project cost of approximately $1.2 million. We are recommending $550,000 in HIP funds for 12 permanent units focused on homeless youth, particularly those exiting the foster care system. The third proposal is from Homes for Good. This is the Legion Cottages in Cottage Grove. It's a total project cost of $500,000. We are recommending $250,000 for a total of 4 units focused on homeless veterans. The fifth is Square One Villages in Cottage Grove, a $1.6 million project. We're recommending $500,000 for 13 units for low-income seniors and disabled individuals. And then finally, the Lane County and Homes for Good Commons on MLK is a $13 million project. We are recommending $500,000 for that project, 51 units for chronically homeless. So that totals a total of $17.8 million in total project costs and allocation from the HIP fund of $2 million that moves forward 90 units in our community in a short period of time. So first, I'd like to, I thought I saw Paul Solomon here, and please, Laura Johnson from sponsors are here. This is an exciting project that sponsors has proposed, permanent supportive housing for individuals with criminal histories, vulnerable to homelessness, 10 individuals housed in 5 duplexes adjacent to the Roosevelt Crossing facility on Highway 99 in Roosevelt. As we mentioned here, this will provide wraparound services and 24-hour staff support provided by sponsors, and construction is slated to begin the spring of 2019. This is a rendering of what those what this tiny house community would look like. There's a lot more information in detail, and again, if you have questions, I would encourage you to ask those, but we want to just give you a brief flavor of this, and here you can see generally that location off of Highway 99 and Roosevelt. The second, I'm going to do this one and then turn it over to Steve Manila to do the balance of the projects. NEDCO, we have, please tell me your name. Karen Sachs, thank you, from Nedco, is here. The Polk Street Apartments expansion project. This is permanent supportive housing for 12 former foster youth who are homeless or at risk of homelessness. We actually understand that there will be a net increase of 13 units, and I'll explain why that is. These are single-room occupancy units with bathroom and small kitchenettes. Case management and supportive services provided by Nedco. Construction is slated to begin the fall of 2019. There's an additional grant, I believe, from the state that Nedco is pursuing. And so Lane County allocating these resources, we believe, will significantly strengthen the proposal and request for those state funds from Nedco, which would make the balance of the funds necessary to make this project go complete. This is a site layout, and you see this is an existing facility off of Polk Street that Nedco operates with 12 single-room occupancy youth, serving this similar population of youth exiting the foster care system. This is the proposed new facility to be constructed, and there are 12. You see, I think this is the ground level, 6 units on the ground level. It's a 2-story. There would be 6 units on the upper level, and then they would relocate the host, the adult who manages the facility, to the new facility, opening up an additional bed at the old facility. So it's a net 13 units there. You can see some other planned garden areas and outdoor space here. This is the second floor, and you can see, if you can catch this here, a full bathroom, a kitchenette, closet, bed, living space. I believe around 250 square feet per unit. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Steve to do the other 3.
First of all, I want to say that, this process ended up being exceptional for us. I think at the budget presentation, there was some discussion of affordable housing, and typically the projects that we work with and do include some form of federal tax credit and some form of federal funding. Something that's unique about all of these projects that we have, with the exception of our Lane County and Homes for Good, the MLK Commons, is that all of these use alternative financing and don't require the federal tax credit program, and so therefore the cost of constructing these units is much less than what it would be. And so when we started this process, we didn't know exactly what kind of proposals we would get. The other thing I would say is the range of proposals, everything from ex-offenders to foster care youth, rural. We did have a proposal to serve the mentally ill that wasn't quite ready for development, that didn't get funded, but is a project that we can work with in the future. So I think this sort of, in my estimation, it exceeded our expectations around the kinds of projects that we would receive. The Legion Cottages in Cottage Grove is a project that Homes for Good and the American Legion and the City of Cottage Grove are jointly working on. 4 tiny homes are to be constructed and Cottage Grove. Case management and supportive services will be provided there. And I think that was the project that one of the agencies that will be providing support services will be St. Vincent de Paul and their Veterans Program. Yeah, and Steve Oaks and Nora Cronin.
Nora Cronin.
Let's see. Okay, so here's the site map of the Legion Cottages. And right there, whoop. Sorry.
Steve M. couldn't handle that.
Tell me where to point.
Legion Cottages property, right there. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Are you done with this?
Yeah. So here's an example. Something else that's unique about this project is that Homes for Good is working with, it's called Oregon Builds, and it's out of the U of O School of Architecture. So architecture students under Oregon Builds are actually going to be constructing the units. And it will be an opportunity for students at the U of O to get involved from the ground up in developing the site. The next project is also a Cottage Grove project, Square One Cottage in Cottage Grove. And Dan Bryant's over here. And do you want to introduce, Dan, the folks that came along? So the project has a group of folks from Cottage Grove who are supporting the development of the project and helping with the project. The first aspect of this project will be to provide for the infrastructure for the site. There's about $250,000 worth of infrastructure work to be done, and the grant will provide for the funding for the infrastructure work. The grant will also provide for initially some of the cottages, but it will create an environment where this group in Cottage Grove will be able to develop the site fully. The site will be operated as a limited equity housing cooperative, meaning that the folks who live there will have some equity in the homes that they occupy. This is for senior and disabled residents, and construction is slated to begin in early 2019.
I actually already broke ground on the model unit, correct?
Right, right. And there's the rendering of the, and I think Square One has learned from the construction at Emerald Village, and so they have a prototype that they're looking at that will be something that is a combination of what they've learned from the previous project that they've done in Eugene. The Commons on MLK, probably most of you have already heard about this project, but it's important to go over it again. It's a joint project between Lane County and Homes for Good. 51 studio units of permanent supportive housing. It is a housing first project, and we'll be housing people who are enrolled in our frequent user service engagement program. Construction is slated to begin in the summer of 2019. I wanted to mention again that last night the City of Eugene City Council took action on both federal home funds and money from their general fund to support the project. And there's an aerial view. On the right is the Lane County Behavioral Health Building. And one of the great benefits of this project is going to be the availability of behavioral health and primary care services to the residents that will be across the breezeway.
Okay, so there you have it. I just wanted to make a couple comments about process here. We had, well, I said this was it was public in that we put out a request for a version of a request for proposals, and Steve mentioned one project that was submitted both from a timing perspective and a cost perspective. They had requested, I think, the total amount of the funding available, so it wouldn't have allowed us to participate in other projects. But we do believe that there's an opportunity to continue to work on that as a partner moving forward. We had, when we received the proposals in December, we reviewed those, we identified the ones that we felt were responsive and most qualified for this funding, and then last week we had each of these organizations come in and present to a panel that included myself, Karen Gaffney, Steve Manella, and Stephanie Jennings, who's the grants manager for the city of Eugene. It was a really great process. It was quick. We had, I think, about 30 to 45 minutes with each group, but very thoughtful, and we left that day extremely energized and excited. I think we have not done, Steve and I have not done the service that each of these organizations would be able to do if they presented to you about the scope and depth of the really important work, the partnerships that they have leveraged, the other funding, and the incredible work that they are all doing individually and with their partners to serve these communities in need. So I would encourage you, if you have specific questions, to invite those proposing those that are here. But we are really, as Steve said, really excited about this. This is, again, federal money that we did not anticipate that came in that we've made available. I think we will now, given the way that this process has gone and how successful it's been to date, try to look at continuing this if one-time funds may become available in the future, and certainly welcome the board's feedback going forward. So I'll stop there, other than just to reiterate that this is directly tied to the board's strategic plan. That, again, the focus has been to seed and incentivize projects that are focused on permanent supportive housing and affordable housing back in our community, to spark investment and to leverage other funds, so it's not Lane County going alone, but we're really partnering with others and incentivizing others to bring money and partners to the table, and that we're moving quickly. And I'm really pleased with the speed at which we've been able to. I think all of the groups said last week, when we told them that this was going to be on the board's agenda this week, they said, wow, this is really moving quickly. So we're excited not only about the process, but I think you saw all of these projects are slated for groundbreaking in 2019 or have already broken ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Given the hour and my commitment to try to keep the work of the board confined to other than noon to 1:30, I'd like to get a motion on the first item, and then we'll have a discussion of it for a while, and then I'll get a motion on the second item, so that in the meantime, Commissioner Buck can participate in the discussion of the first item. So at this time, we'll move to item Order 19-01-15-06 in the matter of awarding housing improvement grants for permanent supportive housing and affordable housing development for the Department of Health and Human Services, Human Service Division, and authorizing the county administrator to sign the resultant contracts. I'll call on our county's vice chair, board's vice chair, to make the motion.
So moved.
Second.
So it's been moved by Commissioner Buck, seconded by Commissioner Burney, to approve the order. And I'd like to invite Commissioner Buck first to make remarks on this, and then everybody else will have a chance, and then we'll let you go for item B. Okay?
I'm really impressed with the projects that were brought forward, and I'm very excited that they are ready in this calendar year. And I think they speak for themselves, and just want to thank you all for being here today.
Okay. Commissioner Farr? No? Commissioner Bozovich?
So thank you, and I hope it's not a sign of things to come that you didn't look up and see my hand raised to make the motion. I'm a little disappointed because this initiative was started with the budget process last year, and where we set aside these funds. I really am pleased that we're moving ahead with this, and I'm really pleased how quickly staff was able to implement this. It was really a great suggestion by our administrator, and the Budget Committee and the Board of Commissioners voted unanimously to support the idea of creating the housing improvement plan with the $2 million in Secure Rural Schools funds that we hadn't planned on getting last year. And I really look forward to these additional 90 supported housing units towards that goal of 600, and also towards the goal of 350 identified in the TAC report.
Okay, anything further?
No, good job. Well, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
Is there, you mentioned that if this continues, this might be a template for moving forward with other unexpected dollars, but you don't expect that's going to happen because they're unexpected. Who knows?
I mean, this was I will say that frankly, this was an experiment. I think we wanted to, we laid out what the goals were, and we thought that this would be, given what the board's priority is and the need in the community, that this would be a good and responsible and effective use of those resources. We're not anticipating, there is no renewal of the Secure Rural Schools program, and certainly it ultimately will be up to the board, but I think we're going to track this closely and see if it continues to be successful, then we'll look for more opportunities.
And moving forward, I'll be really interested if there's some way to leverage private dollars in addition to other public dollars. And I would be very interested, I'm just thinking of aggregate, more units. And I would be also interested, moving forward, if there's if there will be any thought given to leveraging the assisted dwelling unit zoning in Springfield and Eugene, and perhaps even helping incentivize more of those for various different kinds of population.
Commissioner Burney, I'd like to point out Commissioner Farr chairs our Shelter and Supportive Housing Subcommittee of the Poverty and Homelessness Board, and the ADU and also the topic of the private sector involvement and the types of projects that you see here are something that is on the agenda and being discussed as part of our plan.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's it.
Good. Well, I just want to say that this is really a pretty phenomenal follow-up to this one-time money and the use of this one-time money. I guess, to me, everything that's been presented is excellent. The one thing I was going to ask is, although this isn't under the category of unanticipated money, it's under the category of if we took advantage of that construction excise tax opportunity, could we do something like this with the money that would be raised by such a tax?
I don't know the law around the use. I guess I'd generally say yes, probably, but I don't know what the constraints necessarily would be if these specific projects would qualify, but it seems to me that any new revenue that the board implemented or identified could be used for the purpose that the board determined.
It looks like you're getting some classy legal advice here.
Oh, right, yes. So the permitted use, Mr. Dingell's saying that the permitted use would be allowable, but the amount that had been calculated based on the number of permits we'd identified was not significant.
Okay.
If I can, Commissioner, I think what happened is originally people thought it was a percentage of the value of the buildings that were
And it's the number.
Significant, which would have been like over $1 million, but when you actually, it's the cost of the permit, so as my recollection is around $10,000.
Okay. So we need to, we'll bring that up as far as a work session if the board wants to pursue that. Okay, so we've had a motion, we've had a second, and any further discussion on this item before we before we go to the next item? Nope. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries 5-0. Next item is item 8B, and Commissioner Buck, do you want me to read this first? Well, I guess I will read it. Order 19-01-15-11 in the matter of awarding housing improvement plan grants for permanent supportive housing and affordable housing development for the Department of Health and Human Services Division, authorizing the county administrator to sign the resulting contracts. And I know that we will be doing this from time to time throughout the year. So how do you want to handle your possible conflict of interest?
I can just state the declaration now so that you can continue on with this piece.
Okay, so we will continue on with this item, and we will recognize the commissioner's conflict. And would anyone like to make a motion regarding approval of?
I would think, may I?
Add it further?
Yeah, may I state it now? And
Yeah,
then
go ahead.
You all can make your motion and
Yep.
and discussion. Okay. I have a conflict of interest. I'm related to the director of St. Vincent de Paul, who's part of this particular grant award. It borderlines on an actual conflict of interest. And I also have ownership in a company that provides St. Vincent de Paul services, so I'm going to recuse myself from this particular item. I will walk out the door, and you can let me know when.
Well, you might be needed for the next item, so maybe you could just wait.
I think in this particular instance, I'd feel a bit more comfortable exiting, then they can tell me and I can come right in.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Okay, would anyone like to specifically make this motion to approve this order? Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Burney, seconded by Commissioner Bozovich to approve Order 19-01-15-11. You've heard our bigger discussion. It also involved this project. And do you want to say anything more about it, Mr. Mokryski? Yeah. Okay. Very good. Anyone want to make any comments regarding this matter? Okay, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries 4-0. Commissioner Buck excused. What's the preference? Do you want to keep moving with other items, or do you want to recess until 1:30?
Anything we can handle between now and then.
All right, why don't we take item 9A, which is the item I said we would take up as a result of not taking off item 7B, and that is the Golden Foods matter. We're going to have the investment, but the county administrator is going to give a little brief discussion of it.
Just a second.
Mr. Ramirez said he was going to write you a memo or an email on item 9A.
If you want, I can handle that. So
Yeah, why don't we let
basically,
Commissioner Bozovich go on this?
what this was originally, we thought we had to approve the extension of an enterprise zone benefit to this company. It's part of the Harrisburg Enterprise Zone, and it turns out because this is annexed land in the city of Junction City, we don't have to co-adopt that. We had to adopt the expansion. We co-adopt the expansion to include this property, but now the actual extension doesn't require board action. That's just basically, we thought it did. Turns out we really don't. That's why I got pulled off it.
Right.
A couple of things about the project.
Great project, though.
Great project. It is moving forward. They are planning, Northern Gold is planning a $65 million investment in Junction City. It includes facility improvements and new equipment. They're planning on hiring 50 to 75 new employees, above the median family income in Lane County. And as Commissioner Bozovich said, it's been determined that Lane County is a consenting member of the enterprise zone, not a co-sponsoring member. The co-sponsors are Lane County, Harrisburg, and Junction City. So it's not required that the Board of Commissioners take action on the item, but the investment and expansion is moving forward.
And just for the record, I'm back.
Yep, very good. Thank you. Mr. Mokreisky, do you have any other announcements under item 9A?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Regarding the last item.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to point out my experience with the Northern Gold grain millers. When I was the executive director of food for Lane County, grain millers stepped forward with Golden Temple at the time and with Glory Bee Honey to design and make a cereal that they provided to Food for Lane County. We repackaged it, and that cereal is being spread throughout schools in the entire Lane County area and beyond. When I asked them to double their production of the cereal, they, without hesitation, doubled their production of the cereal. So they are a community partner in many, many ways, including the very basic need of providing nutrition to the kids in school who otherwise, during weekends, breaks, and summer vacation will otherwise potentially not have food. So I want to really commend them for the work that they've done and the work that they continue to do. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you very much. Any other announcements you'd like to make at this time, Mr. Mokreisky?
Quickly, Mr. Chair, there was a discussion, has been a discussion about Collard Lake Road, and Commissioner Bozevich, I believe last week, made a request that we bring back a discussion about local access roads generally and what the county's policy on maintenance of local access roads is. We're going to bring that conversation forward. There, at this stage, we had contemplated an emergency item, and we're not bringing that forward to the board for any emergency business at this stage. But I want to just share with you that there has been a slide on Collard Lake Road, which is north of Florence. This is a local access road, so it's not. This is a road that is not owned by Lane County or by a private entity. It is sort of in. It's just out there without any ownership, and so classified by Lane County as a local access road. The county's current policy is that we do not maintain local access roads unless specifically authorized by the board in emergency situations. In this situation, Collard Lake Road is near this portion of Collard Lake Road is near the end of a dead end road servicing only a handful of residents. A repair would be extremely expensive. It's on a slope, and so it would be an extremely expensive project. There is currently one functioning lane, and the slide area has been marked with barricades, so we believe that it's relatively safe and you can't get through it for the time being. So we continue to assess that road. We are going to bring forward a discussion with the board about the broader topic of local access roads and needing to look at what our policy is around that, because there are a lot of local access roads out there. They are costly, as in this case it would be to maintain them. So we'll need to get some policy guidance from the board, but I just wanted to provide that update for you if you have any additional questions. I think I would anticipate in the next month we'll bring forward a discussion about local access road policy.
Okay, any questions from the board on that?
No, I think that was rather clear, and I'll defer to Public Works that it seems like this situation's at least stable and safe for the moment, and we have time to queue up that longer discussion of how we deal with local access roads and setting board policy around them.
Okay, very good. So I think at this time, Mr. Dingle, do you have any announcements under your item, let's see, that would be item 6A?
No announcements.
No announcements, okay. Any questions for Mr. Dingle? Nope. Okay, so let's then go into our adjustments to our agenda, and I'll try to go over what I envision will happen the rest of the day. We have a public hearing at 1:30. That will be, we have a first reading and setting a second reading for a public hearing on item B. We have, excuse me, A and B are just first readings. C is our reopened public hearing, and then we'll go into either our work session on car camping, or we will go back to the setting of the courthouse matter, item 7C, depending on availability of staff. And then we will march down the rest of the agenda. Any questions, comments?
I just want to make sure I understand. So what time would the chair anticipate doing item 7C, the first reading?
I envision that we would do the Public Works items 13A, B, and C, and then we would probably go to the, to the courthouse matter before going to the work session with Mr. Henry and Mr. Manel, unless there's a better idea.
Chair.
Yeah.
I think, excuse me, it is a little bit more helpful for those of us that are newer to the commission to try and go through the agenda in as much of its original order as possible. This one's only 10 minutes, and if our county council has other work to do, we could probably get through it fairly quickly unless you anticipate that there's a lot of comments.
Are you talking about the setting of 7C
Yes.
courthouse?
Yes.
I think there'll be quite a few questions. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's do this then. We'll do the Public Works items 13, except for the work session on car camping. Then we'll go back to 7C, 7C. And in answer to your question, Mr. Dingle, I don't know how long all those Public Works items are going to take. I'll just read them off as we go through them.
Chair Sorensen, members of the board, I'll make it work. I have a conference call, I think, that runs from 1 to 3. So I'll either come, it may not go.
I doubt if we'll get done before 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I do, I'll have some.
And if we do, we can pull in the work session items 13D.
Someone will be ready. Either I will or I'll have somebody else come down and do it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we're in recess now until 1:30, right back at Harris Hall. Thank you.